Chapter 12:20. Bloodline. Qian Mo knew that this was a great opportunity for her. If her bloodline could break through, her strength would undergo a qualitative change. Although she was already in the self-release tier, self-release tiers were also divided into strong and weak. Strictly speaking, the self-release tier was divided into lower tier, middle tier, and upper tier. And now she could barely be considered lower tier. Thus, she came to find Yi Xian this time wanting to break through her bloodline. Guan Yin glanced at Qian Mo but did not speak. About 4 hours later, Yi Xian walked out of the room. When he saw Guan Yin and Qian Mo, Yi Xian paused slightly, then smiled and said, "You were waiting for me?" Guan Yin nodded. She walked in front of Yi Xian. "I came to remind you that you have to at least break through to the return to origin shattering tier." Yi Xian nodded. Understood. He naturally understood that his greatest problem now was actually his cultivation level. His cultivation level was too low. If he could reach the return to origin shattering tier and half-step self-release tier, he could even kill ordinary self-release tier elites. However, he had just broken through to the shattering void tier, and it was really not suitable for him to continue breaking through to the return to origin shattering tier in a short period of time. Guan Yin nodded slightly. She hesitated, then said, "There is one more thing that you should know, Your Majesty Dao Yi." Yi Xian asked, "What is it?" Guan Yin said gravely, "The cultivation resources can at most last for half a month." "Half a month?" Yi Xian frowned slightly. "That's it." Guan Yin nodded. "In this period of time, my spirit of dark, the Holy Church, and the ancient race have taken out almost all of our resources, and now we can't hold on much longer." Yi Xian asked, "Do you have any other ideas?" Guan Yin looked at Yi Xian. "There is no better way." Yi Xian was silent. He had almost forgotten something. In this period of time, the reason why the fifth dimension could improve comprehensively, and countless people experienced earth-shattering changes, was because of the contribution of resources from the spirit of dark and other races. And now, the spirit of dark and other races could no longer hold on. Resources? Yi Xian frowned. Guan Yin suddenly said, "We can still hold on for half a month. Think of something." With that, she turned around and left. She was really helpless when it came to resources. He couldn't plunder the sixth dimension, right? Although the current fifth dimension was already powerful enough, starting a war with the sixth dimension was akin to digging one's own grave. Once the sixth dimension and the Dao world joined hands, the fifth dimension would have no chance of winning. After Guan Yin left, Yi Xian looked at Qian Mo and asked with a smile, "Miss Qian Mo, is something the matter?" Qian Mo looked at Yi Xian. "My bloodline is about to break through." Yi Xian was slightly taken aback before he smiled and said, "That's a good thing." Qian Mo stared at Yi Xian. "Just a little bit more." Yi Xian asked, "Do you need my help?" Qian Mo looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, "Miss Qian Mo, if you need any help you can tell me. I Yi Xian will do my best." Qian Mo was silent for a long time before she said, "I need your bloodline power to help." Yi Xian was stunned before he softly said, "Double?" Qian Mo suddenly looked at Yi Xian. In the next moment she and Yi Xian disappeared. Soon the two of them appeared in a void. This was a sealed space. When they appeared in this sealed space, Qian Mo pointed at Yi Xian's chest and took out the world prison pagoda from Yi Xian's body. Of course, this was with Yi Xian's cooperation. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to control the world prison pagoda. After closing the world prison pagoda, Qian Mo looked at Yi Xian and said, "It's just cultivation." After she finished speaking, her and Yi Xian's clothes instantly turned to ashes. Soon, the two of them intertwined. There was only one thought in Yi Xian's mind: "I've been raped. I can't resist. I can't do anything." When the two of them fused again, the blood in their bodies started to boil again. The two bloodlines intertwined. Of course, the one who benefited the most was Qian Mo. This was because Yi Xian's bloodline power was stronger than hers. Her bloodline could borrow Yi Xian's bloodline power to break through. Just like that, time slowly passed. During this time, the two of them didn't just enjoy themselves like the first time. Instead, they used the dual cultivation technique that Tendo gave them. This time, the two of them didn't want to waste it. Gradually, rays of blood-red light appeared around the two of them. This blood-red light wrapped around the two of them and was slowly absorbed by them. Their auras also became stronger and stronger, especially Qian Mo. Her aura was growing at a visible rate. About 4 hours later, a powerful aura suddenly swept out from Qian Mo's body. This powerful aura directly pushed Yi Xian dozens of feet away. Yi Xian looked at Qian Mo in the distance. Qian Mo's eyes were slowly closed. In her body, countless blood vessels bulged. He could clearly see the blood flowing quickly in her blood vessels. Her bloodline was about to break through. Yi Xian looked at himself. His aura had also become much stronger. However, it was still far from Qian Mo's. Yi Xian shook his head. He was just a free tool. At this moment, Qian Mo's body gradually calmed down. She opened her eyes. Yi Xian walked in front of Qian Mo. How is it? Qian Mo slowly clenched her right hand. A powerful force quickly gathered in her right arm. Seeing this scene, the corners of Qian Mo's mouth slightly rose. She was now at least at the Release One realm. In addition, her bloodline power had already broken through the shackles of her bloodline. Could be said that she was at the peak of the Release One realm. Qian Mo looked at Yi Xian. You didn't break through? Yi Xian shook his head. I just feel that my cultivation has become a bit stronger. However, I didn't break through. Qian Mo frowned. After a moment, she said in a low voice, Your bloodline is too strong. She had to say that she was somewhat shocked. Her mortal bloodline could be said to be the strongest bloodline. Even the demonic path family's demonic path bloodline and the emperor bloodline of the emperor clans couldn't compare. However, from the looks of it, Yi Xian's bloodline was even stronger than hers. What kind of bloodline was this? Qian Mo looked at Yi Xian as if she was looking at a monster. Yi Xian shook his head. I'm afraid it will be very difficult for my bloodline to break through. Qian Mo nodded. Indeed. Yi Xian took out a robe and put it on Qian Mo. Qian Mo looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. She just let Yi Xian put on the robe for her. Yi Xian didn't do anything while helping Qian Mo put on the robe. He looked at Qian Mo and said, Miss Qian Mo, no matter what, congratulations. Qian Mo nodded and turned to leave. However, after taking 2 steps, she suddenly stopped and said, It's just for cultivation. After saying that, she disappeared into the end of the starry sky. Cultivation. Yi Xian smiled and turned to leave. At that moment, Qian Mo suddenly appeared in front of him. Yi Xian was stunned. Miss Qian Mo? Qian Mo suddenly grabbed his shoulder. A moment later, the two of them appeared on a snowy mountain. This was the place where Qian Mo had been sealed in the past. Qian Mo pointed at the ice palace in the depths of the mountain. There are many financial resources that I brought from the Dao world in there. A lot. After saying that, she disappeared. In the same place, Yi Xian was silent for a moment. Then he went to the ice palace. Soon he found a treasury. When he saw the treasures inside, Yi Xian was completely dumbfounded. There was an extraordinary amount of treasures. In fact, there was something that Qian Mo didn't say. Not only did she bring the treasures from the Dao world, but there were also treasures that she had robbed in the 5th dimension. However, this wasn't important to her now. To her, how to break through was the most important thing. Although she had lost her freedom while Tendo had sealed her, it was also this opportunity that allowed her to break through to the self-release realm. This made her understand that strength was the king. Everything else was useless. Yi Xian scanned the entire treasury. Then, with a wave of his right hand, he stored all the treasures in the prison pagoda. With these resources, he could temporarily solve the resource problem of the 5th dimension. Yi Xian turned and left. After returning to the Wu clan, Yi Xian handed all the financial resources of the treasury to Guanyin. Guanyin glanced at Yi Xian, but didn't ask anything. Although she didn't ask, she was still a little shocked. In such a short time, where did Yi Xian get all these treasures? After Yi Xian gave the treasures to Guanyin, he left. Soon Yi Xian arrived at the Worldwide Academy. At this time, the academy was also gradually expanding. The elites that had left the academy had basically all returned. It was worth mentioning that teacher had also reached the Shattering Void tier. Moreover, her battle prowess could completely crush ordinary return to origin Shattering tier elites. Of course, this time he didn't come to find teacher. Instead, he came to find Zhang Wenxiu. In a courtyard, Yi Xian and Zhang Wenxiu sat opposite each other. Yi Xian looked at Zhang Wenxiu, smiled, and said, It feels like we haven't seen each other for many years. Zhang Wenxiu said calmly, We haven't seen each other for a long time. Have you become more glib? Yi Xian smiled, then said seriously, Wenxiu, I want to tell you something about your teacher. In the end, he still chose to tell Zhang Wenxiu and teacher about the relationship between him and the prophet. He didn't want to lie to Zhang Wenxiu. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian was about to speak when Zhang Wenxiu suddenly said, No need to say anything. Yi Xian looked at Zhang Wenxiu. Zhang Wenxiu said softly, You are you, teacher is teacher. I respect teacher like a father, but for you, Yi Xian smiled, It's love. Zhang Wenxiu shook his head, You've become more thick-skinned. Yi Xian was speechless. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian, To be honest, I'm already very happy that you came to talk to me. And one more thing, I'm with you not because I think you're teacher. Yi Xian smiled, I know that. Zhang Wenxiu nodded. Don't tell teacher. She cares about teacher very much, but teacher is already in the past. Moreover, she now believes that you are teacher. In fact, it's nothing. You've received teacher's inheritance, so it's understandable that you bear his karma. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. It had to be said that there were good and bad karma of the prophet. Zhang Wenxiu was about to speak, but at this moment she and Yi Xian suddenly looked up at the same time. In the depths of the starry sky, 6 powerful auras suddenly appeared. Following the appearance of these 6 powerful auras, the starry sky immediately boiled up. The Tao world had arrived. Yi Xian was about to leave when Zhang Wenxiu grabbed his hand. I'll go with you. Yi Xian was about to speak, but Zhang Wenxiu shook her head. We'll live and die together. Chapter 12:21. Together in life and death. Yi Xian felt warmth in his heart. Ever since he met Zhang Wenxiu, the two of them had spent very little time together. However, their feelings for each other were very real. There were no words of love between the two of them, but in Yi Xian's eyes, it was enough to say that they were together in life and death. Yi Xian left the Worldwide Academy with Zhang Wenxiu, and the two of them headed straight for the starry sky. When the two of them arrived in the starry sky, 2 women were already there. They were Lanxiu and Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi glanced at Yi Xian and shrugged. And Lanxiu glanced at Yi Xian and Zhang Wenxiu, but did not say anything. The atmosphere was a little awkward. At this time, Guanyin appeared in the field. Everyone looked at Guanyin, and Guanyin said softly, "What should come has come." Saying so, she looked at Yi Xian and asked, "What do you plan to do?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Why don't we have a chat first?" The women, Yi Xian laughed and then turned into a streak of sword light that soared into the sky. Soon Yi Xian led the women to the depths of the starry sky, and there they saw 6 people. The leaders were Li Mian and Mo Dao. This time the two of them were leading the group. Li Mian glanced at Yi Xian, and her heart relaxed slightly. Yi Xian was still in the shattering void tier and had not broken through. But soon her eyes moved down and fell on Lanxiu and the others. When seeing these women, Li Mian could not help but frown. Although these women's cultivation levels were low, he could feel their strength. Freaks. There were still freaks in this Tao realm. Li Mian collected his thoughts and looked at Yi Xian and said, "Young Master Yi, you should know who we are." Yi Xian nodded and said, "We are from the Tao realm." Li Mian nodded and said, "Yes." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Are you all here for the Tao scripture?" Li Mian smiled and said, "Young Master Yi is indeed a straightforward person." "That's right, we're here for that scripture." Yi Xian said solemnly, "You're late." Li Mian frowned. "What does young Master Yi mean?" Yi Xian said with a straight face, "That scripture has been taken away by the ancient temple." Hearing this, everyone was shocked. All the girls looked at Yi Xian with strange expressions. Somewhere high up in the clouds, a woman dressed in monk robes frowned deeply. "How can you speak so carelessly?" In the starry sky, Li Mian looked at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, is what you said true?" Yi Xian said seriously, "It's true." Li Mian shook his head. "I don't really believe it." Yi Xian sighed. "Not long ago, 3 self-release realm experts came to the ancient temple. They captured my friend, the 5th dimension Tendo, and said that if I didn't hand over the scripture, they would kill the 5th dimension Tendo. I had no choice but to hand it over." Li Mian frowned. "You're willing to hand over the scripture for a 5th dimension Tendo?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "If you don't believe me, you can go ask Gu Shi." Li Mian looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, "I'm a swordsman. A swordsman will not lie against his conscience." Li Mian was silent. Most of the swordsmen he knew were proud. Those swordsmen had bad tempers and disdained to lie. Could it really have been taken away by Gu Shi? But he still did not believe that Yi Xian would hand over the scripture for the 5th dimension Tendo. Yi Xian suddenly said, "I can swear to the heavens." Everyone, Yi Xian looked at Li Mian. "It's true, I can swear. Also, I, Yi Xian, am the #1 swordsman of the 5th dimension. Why would I lie? Aren't you looking down on me too much?" Li Mian was silent. At this time Yi Xian said, "Everyone, to tell you the truth, I, Yi Xian, know my own limits. I know that I can't keep this scripture. If I hand it over, I can live longer. Therefore, I gave it to the ancient temple. If you fight with me now, it will only make the ancient temple laugh." Li Mian did not say anything. Mo Dao beside him said, "This person's words are half true and half false." Li Mian looked at Mo Dao. Mo Dao said, "However, according to what I know, the ancient temple has indeed sent people to the 5th dimension." Li Mian said, "In other words, it is very likely that the ancient temple has obtained the study. Mo Dao nodded, that is a possibility. However, this Yi Xian does not look like a good person. His words cannot be trusted. Li Mian said, but as he said, if we fight with him, it will only benefit Gu Shi. Mo Dao nodded, that is indeed the case. Li Mian was silent. At this time he suddenly felt conflicted. Should he fight with Yi Xian? In truth, although they had 6 self-release realm experts on their side, they were still a bit afraid of Yi Xian and that array from before. The 5th dimension was not without a fighting chance. At this time an old man suddenly appeared. This old man was wearing monk robes and had no hair. He wore a string of prayer beads on his neck. Seeing this person, Li Mian and the others became vigilant. Danger. The ancient temple. The Tao world did not dare to underestimate a mysterious place like the ancient temple. The old monk put his palms together and looked at Yi Xian. Benefactor Yi, how can you speak without thinking? My ancient temple has never obtained the study from you. Yi Xian suddenly pointed at the old monk. You are the one who is speaking without thinking. You sent 6 self-release realm experts to the lower realm and captured the 5th dimension Tendo. You want me to hand over the study or you will kill the 5th dimension Tendo and destroy the 5th dimension. You dare to say that this was not done by you? The old monk was dumbfounded. You? My ancient temple has never done this. You, how can you say that? Yi Xian's expression became somewhat sinister. You are too shameless. Not only did you snatch the study, you don't even admit it. Oh, I understand. You want to use our 5th dimension to fight with the Tao world and then reap the benefits. Hearing this, Li Mian and the others looked at the old monk. The old monk shook his head. Young Master Yi, my ancient temple indeed wants to obtain the study. However, due to some reasons we have never taken action. What you said is venomous slander. Yi Xian sneered. Due to some reasons we have never taken action. I am very curious, what is the reason? The old monk glanced at Yi Xian. The person behind young Master Yi is not simple. That 5th dimension Tendo is even more so. Young Master Yi just said that we captured the 5th dimension Tendo. Saying this, he shook his head and smiled bitterly. Young Master Ye's words are really funny. That 5th dimension Tendo is not simple. My ancient temple does not have the ability to capture her. The ancient temple is very afraid of the 5th dimension Tendo because this woman is really unfathomable. At this moment, Li Mian suddenly said, Master, are you joking? How can a 5th dimension Tendo not be simple? The old monk looked at Li Mian. Haven't you come into contact with Miss Mu? Li Mian smiled. We haven't. However, how capable can a mere Tendo be? The old monk sighed softly. Tao world? How can you be so stupid? Everyone was speechless. Li Mian stared at the old monk. Are you insulting my Tao world? The old monk shook his head. I have no intention of insulting the Tao world. I'm just expressing my feelings. 5th dimension Tendo. That woman's strength is unfathomable. However, the Tao world actually thinks that she is very weak. Is this a joke? Li Mian looked at the old monk. I feel that the study is very likely to be in your hands. The old monk frowned slightly. Why? Li Mian smiled. First, Yi Xian is the first swordsman of the 5th dimension. This kind of person, I believe he will not lie. In fact, I should say that he disdains lying. Second, I feel that it is impossible for your ancient temple not to fight for the study. Therefore, when Yi Xian said that you imprisoned a 5th dimension Tendo, I don't think it is nonsense. It is true. Yi Xian was speechless. The old monk looked at Li Mian. According to what I know, the Tao world's Pope is also a wise man. Why would he send an idiot like you down? Could it be that he sent you down to be a joke? Everyone was speechless. Li Mian stared at the old monk. In the next moment he disappeared. In the distance the old monk shook his head. Amitabha retard. After saying that he slapped out with his palm. With this palm, a huge golden palm print crossed the starry sky. Boom. With a violent explosion, a figure retreated rapidly in the starry sky. The person who retreated was Li Mian. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings instantly became extremely solemn when they witnessed this scene. Especially Yi Xian. The gap between the self-release realm was so huge. Wasn't this old monk too good at fighting? At this moment, a voice suddenly resounded in his mind. Be careful. This person is at least at the upper self-release realm. The upper self-release realm. Yi Xian looked at the old monk with vigilance in his heart. In the distance, Li Mian looked at his cracked right hand, and then he looked up at the old monk with disbelief in his eyes. The upper self-release realm. The old monk pressed his palms together. That study isn't in my ancient temple. As he spoke, he turned to look at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, what my ancient temple did is what it did. If it didn't, then it didn't. Young Master Yi, please clear my ancient temple's name. Yi Xian glanced at the old monk. You're amazing. I don't dare to refute anything you say. The old monk was dumbfounded. What are you saying? In the distance, Li Mian suddenly spoke solemnly. Master, you said that the study isn't in your hands. Do you have any proof? The old monk frowned. Young Master Yi said that it's in my ancient temple. Do you have any proof? Li Mian looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said solemnly, the fifth dimension Tendo is in your hands. The old monk stared at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, you said that the fifth dimension Tendo is in my ancient temple's hands. Do you have any proof? Yi Xian looked at Li Mian. If you don't believe me, you can search the ancient temple. The fifth dimension Tendo is definitely in their ancient temple. Hearing this, Li Mian looked at the old monk. The old monk shook his head. My ancient temple doesn't allow outsiders to step in. How can I let you search? Yi Xian looked at Li Mian. He shrugged. I won't speak any more. The old monk. Li Mian stared at the old monk. Master, does your ancient temple not have the courage to admit what you've done? The old monk shook his head and sighed. Fool, this old monk has nothing to say to you. As he spoke, he suddenly struck out with his palm. Seeing this, Li Mian's expression changed and he hurriedly said, Attack. As he spoke, he and the few self-release realm experts beside him charged out. P.S. I wanted to have an offline gathering, but I suddenly realized that if it's a gathering, I might be in danger. Many readers have unhealthy thoughts. Chapter 12:22. Seeing Li Ming and the others rushing over, the old monk frowned. He did not choose to fight, instead glancing at Yi Xian. Then his body turned illusory and he quickly disappeared. He left. Seeing this, Yi Xian, who was not far away, hurried to say, He's running away. However, when Li Mian and the others arrived in front of the old monk had already disappeared. He had escaped. Seeing the old monk escape, Li Mian's expression became unsightly. At this time, the nearby Yi Xian suddenly said, If we let the ancient temple learn the Tao scripture, who would be their match? Too terrifying. Li Mian glanced at Yi Xian, not saying anything. A moment later, Li Mian suddenly said, Let's go. Finished speaking, he led Mo Dao and the others and disappeared. After Li Mian and the others disappeared, the nearby Guanyin suddenly wanted to say something, but Yi Xian shook his head. AI, it's a pity for my Tao scripture. This damned ancient temple. Hearing this, Guanyin immediately shut his mouth. Soon Yi Xian and the experts of the fifth dimension disappeared into the starry sky while cursing. However, Li Mian and the others appeared again. Li Mian looked at Yi Xian below, silent. No one knew what he was thinking. Mo Dao suddenly said, You don't believe his words, right? Li Mian calmly said, Of course not. Mo Dao glanced at Li Mian. Just now, you deliberately attacked in anger for him to see. Mo Dao softly said, If we fight to the death with Yi Xian, do you think the ancient temple will just watch? Mo Dao shook his head. They will wait to reap the benefits. Li Mian nodded. Yes. Therefore we must pull the ancient temple into this. Mo Dao frowned. Will the ancient temple get involved? Li Mian softly said, Just now Yi Xian framed the ancient temple, do you think they will feel good? Saying this, he coldly smiled. The ancient temple will definitely not feel good. Therefore, as long as we operate a little, we can definitely join hands with the ancient temple and deal with Yi Xian together. Mo Dao said with a smile, Brilliant. Not only will it deepen the conflict between the ancient temple and Yi Xian, but it will also numb Yi Xian, making him think that we are all fools. Li Mian said softly, The Tao scripture is of great importance, so we have to be cautious. If we're not careful, we might be consigned to eternal damnation. As he spoke, he looked down. The fifth dimension isn't as simple as we think it is. If we underestimate it, we will be consigned to eternal damnation. Mo Dao nodded. During this period of contact with Yi Xian, he also discovered that Yi Xian was not simple. It should be said that the entire fifth dimension was not simple. He hadn't forgotten the might of the formation from before. Li Mian suddenly said, You guys stay here and don't do anything. I will go to the ancient temple and the Union Hall. If possible, try to ally with them. During this time, don't do anything and wait for my news. Mo Dao nodded. All right. Li Mian seemed to think of something and said, Send someone to investigate the fifth dimension's Tendo and see what kind of person he is. Mo Dao nodded. I will go personally. Li Mian nodded slightly and disappeared into the horizon. Below, Yi Xian went directly to the pawn shop. Chen Mo was the only one there. Chen Mo looked at Yi Xian. The ancient temple is not simple. Yi Xian nodded. Qianemo, do you know the origin of the ancient temple? Qianemo shook her head. I don't know. I don't think anyone in the Tao world knows. This faction is extremely mysterious. Yi Xian frowned. Extremely mysterious? Qianemo nodded. No one knows how long they have existed. I only know that the Tao world feared the most in the sixth dimension. The ancient temple. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. I'm very curious. Why didn't they make a move directly? Yi Xian said softly, could it be that they were afraid that the Tao world would reap the benefits if they made a move on me first? Qianemo looked at Yi Xian. That is possible. However, I feel that they are more afraid of you. Yi Xian was stunned. Then he smiled. Afraid of what? Qianemo shook her head. You are also very mysterious. Yi Xian was speechless. Qianemo suddenly said, no matter what, you have to guard against this ancient temple. Yi Xian nodded. Miss Qianemo, can you defeat that old monk? Qianemo said in a deep voice, I can only fight him. I am not confident of defeating him. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. After saying that, he turned and left. Qianemo suddenly said, I did not agree to help you fight. Yi Xian stopped and turned around with a smile. I did not ask Miss Qianemo to help me fight either. Qianemo looked at Yi Xian. My intuition tells me that you are very dangerous. Yi Xian smiled. I did not restrict Miss Qianemo. Miss Qianemo, you can leave at any time if you want. Really? After saying that, he opened his palm, and Qianmo's soul floated in front of her. Then he turned and left. In the pawn shop, Qianmo looked at the soul in front of her in a daze. That fellow handed over his soul just like that? Without any conditions? Qianmo was silent for a long time. Then, she looked in the direction that Yi Xian left with a complicated look in her eyes. After leaving the pawn shop, Yi Xian returned to the Wu clan. He went to look for Guanyin, Old Li, and the others. Yi Xian looked at Old Li. Old Li, what is the level of the array formation now? Old Li said in a deep voice, give me 5 more days. 5 days? Yi Xian frowned. Guanyin suddenly said, you don't believe that Li Mian? Yi Xian nodded. If he is an idiot, how could he reach self-release? This person does not look like an idiot. What I am most worried about is that they will join hands with the ancient temple to deal with me first. Guanyin nodded. That is highly possible. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, they will join hands with the ancient temple. This is the worst-case scenario. Therefore we have to prepare for the worst. After saying that, he looked at Old Li. Old Li, we still need to speed up. Old Li nodded. I will do my best. After saying that, he stood up and left. Yi Xian looked at Guanyin. How is the sword sect? Guanyin said, if they make a move, they will definitely give you a pleasant surprise. Yi Xian nodded. You have worked hard during this period of time. Needless to say, Guanyin's ability was extremely formidable. Especially her management ability. She was able to balance so many powers in the 5th dimension and manage everything in an orderly manner. This was truly rare. Guanyin looked at Yi Xian. I am doing this for myself and the spirit race. Yi Xian smiled. No matter what, Miss Guanyin, I hope that we will be able to work together happily in the future. Guanyin said in a low voice, I have a question. Can you answer me honestly? Yi Xian nodded. Go ahead. Guanyin looked at Yi Xian. How strong is that green-clothed man? This was a knot in her heart. All those years ago, that green-clothed man had almost annihilated the entire spirit race with a single sword strike. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, his strength should be on par with that woman in a plain dress. When she heard this, Guanyin's tightly clenched fists loosened slowly. Or it should be said that her entire body seemed to have relaxed quite a bit. Revenge had always been a knot in her heart, but after she found out about the green-clothed man's strength, this knot in her heart had suddenly been undone. Can I take revenge? I definitely can't. An expert on par with that woman in a plain dress. What sort of concept was that? If the spirit race continued to take revenge, then they would be courting death. She could give up on taking revenge in a justifiable manner. It wasn't that she didn't want to take revenge, it was that she really couldn't. Yi Xian looked at Guanyin. Miss Guan, are you alright? Guanyin shook her head. What could possibly happen to me? Yi Xian nodded. It's good that you're fine. Miss Guan, I'll leave the matters here to you. I'll be going now. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Within the hall, Guanyin shook her head and smiled bitterly. What sort of monster did the spirit race offend all those years ago? Yi Xian arrived at a riverside, and he found Audiobook and Situ in a bamboo house by the riverside. Yi Xian smiled. "Greetings, senior sister." "Greetings, senior Situ." Situ said indifferently, "What's the matter?" Yi Xian said seriously, "Senior sister, senior Situ, both of you should have seen that old monk's strength earlier. Is there a huge difference between the two of you?" Situ nodded. "There's a gap between us in terms of cultivation realm." Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "What about in terms of combat strength?" Situ shrugged. "I haven't fought him, so I don't know." Yi Xian looked at Audiobook, and Audiobook said softly, "We'll only know after we fight. We'll only know after we fight." Yi Xian's heart relaxed slightly. This proves that these two can fight that old monk. Audiobook suddenly said, "The two of us can block two self-release realm experts for you. If it's someone like that old monk, the two of us can join forces and block them for you. However, your opponents don't seem to be just that, so you have to make more preparations, understand?" Yi Xian nodded. "I know." Audiobook nodded. "Go and do your work. We will make a move when it's time." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Thank you, senior sister." After saying that, he turned and left. Situ looked at Yi Xian's back view and said softly, "Audiobook, if you get involved in this whirlpool, you might not have a good ending." Audiobook said casually, "Just do it. What's the point of thinking so much?" Situ shook her head. "Do people who drink have big hearts?" Sixth dimension. On this day, Li Mian came to the Union Hall. The person who received him was the Union Hall's Hall Master, Wen Jiarhua. In the Union Hall, Wen Jiarhua said with a smile, "Is something the matter?" Li Mian said with a smile, "Hall Master Wen should know why I'm here." Wen Jiarhua said softly, "To be honest, our Union Hall doesn't want to get involved in the matters between Yi Xian and the Tao world." Li Mian looked at Wen Jiarhua. "Hall Master Wen, don't you want that Tao scripture?" Wen Jiarhua said with a smile, "It's better not to have such a divine item. Otherwise it will only invite trouble. Our Union Hall wants to develop peacefully and seek benefits for the sixth dimension." Li Mian said with a smile, "As far as I know, the Union Hall has always been helping Yi Xian." Wen Jiarhua nodded. "We are only cooperating with him in exchange for some things we want. This won't affect the Tao world, right?" Li Mian looked at Wen Jiarhua. "Miss Wen, are you sure you won't consider joining forces with us?" Wen Jiarhua shook her head. "If the fifth dimension and the Tao world start a war, we won't interfere." Li Mian nodded. "Understood. Goodbye." After saying that, he turned and left. After Li Mian left, Wen Jiarhua said softly, "I still want to live for a few more years." Chapter 12:23. Target Yi Xian? Wen Jiarhua had such thoughts before. That was because the Tao scripture was really tempting. However, every time she thought about it, she would think of a person. The plain-dressed woman. The woman who had once destroyed the Union Hall with a sword from a star domain away. That woman had almost destroyed the Union Hall and the entire six-dimensional universe. Even now, the six-dimensional universe had yet to recover its essence energy. In fact, Wen Jiarhua did not understand why the Tao world wanted to fight to the death with Yi Xian. Could it be that the plain-dressed woman was too low-key in the Tao world? She had almost destroyed the entire demon Tao family. How could she be low-key? Wen Jiarhua shook her head and sighed. She did not say anything else and turned to leave. After Li Mian left the Union Hall, he arrived at the sacred mountain. At the foot of the sacred mountain, he looked up and could vaguely see an ancient temple at the end of the mountain. Li Mian was a little curious. Besides him, the entire Tao world was curious about this ancient temple. However, even the Tao world did not know the origin of this ancient temple. Li Mian was silent for a moment. Just as he was about to go up, a voice was heard beside him. "Sir, please wait." Li Mian turned around and saw an old man standing not far from him. It was the old monk who had fought with him previously. The old monk looked at Li Mian and pressed his palms together. "Benefactor Li, we meet again." Li Mian also pressed his palms together. "Greetings, master." The old monk nodded slightly. It seems like Benefactor Li does not believe Yi Xian's words. Li Mian smiled. "Why would I believe him? Master, I came here to cooperate with you. What do you think?" The old monk looked at Li Mian. "Benefactor Li, please speak." Li Mian smiled. "If we don't make a move, the ancient temple will not either. We are all afraid that the other party will reap the benefits. If we continue to be in a deadlock, Yi Xian will benefit for nothing." The old monk nodded in agreement. Li Mian smiled slightly. "Great master, my idea is very simple. The Tao world and the ancient temple will join forces to kill Yi Xian first. If we can kill Yi Xian and the Tao scripture is really in his hands, then we can discuss the ownership of the Tao scripture. But before that, what we need to do is to join forces and annihilate Yishan first." The old monk fell silent. Li Mian smiled and said, "Grandmaster, what do you think of Yishan's talent?" The old monk said softly, "A genius." Li Mian nodded. "Although I've only fought him once, we've investigated him. He's indeed a genius. Not only that, his combat strength is extremely strong, and he's also a swordsman who has comprehended sword cognition. If we continue to ignore him, he might not be someone we can deal with in the future." The old monk looked at Li Mian. "Do you know where the fifth dimension Tendo is?" Li Mian shook his head. "I don't know." The old monk sighed softly. "Although Yishan is terrifying, it's fortunate that he's under control. As for the fifth dimension Tendo, it's terrifying. The thought of the fifth dimension Tendo gave him a headache. If they weren't afraid of that woman, they would have attacked long ago." Li Mian suddenly asked, "Is the fifth dimension Tendo very terrifying?" The old monk glanced at Li Mian and said, "She's not particularly terrifying, but she's a little troublesome." Li Mian smiled. "How about this? If she dares to interfere with Yishan's matters, let the Tao world deal with her. What do you think?" The old monk looked at Li Mian. "All right." Li Mian smiled slightly. "When do we make our move?" The old monk said softly, "As soon as possible." Li Mian said, "The Tao world can do it any time." The old monk said in a deep voice, "Once we find the fifth dimension Tendo." Li Mian nodded. "All right." After saying that, he raised his head and glanced at the ancient temple on the sacred mountain. "Master, have you been to the Tao world?" The master shook his head slightly. "No, but we know a little about the history of the Tao world." "Tao world." Li Mian smiled. "The ancient temple is very mysterious." The master pressed his palms together and did not say anything. Li Mian did not ask anything else and turned to leave. "After we find the fifth dimension Tendo, I'll inform you. Please bring your men over then." After saying that, he was already at the end of the horizon. After Li Mian disappeared, a woman in a monk's robe suddenly appeared behind the old monk. The woman said softly, "Master, I'm sorry." The old monk smiled. "What are you sorry for?" The woman said, "I'm incompetent. I couldn't get the study." The old monk shook his head. "That slippery swordsman is not someone you can fight against." The woman looked at the old monk. "If we were to fight one-on-one, I might not lose to him." The old monk smiled. "I know. What I mean is that in terms of intelligence he's more cunning than you. You're not suitable to fight against him." The woman pressed her palms together. "Master, did the study originally belong to our ancient temple?" The old monk shook his head. "No." The woman frowned. "Since it doesn't belong to the ancient temple, how can we snatch it by force? Isn't that violating the 5 commandments?" The old monk smiled and walked up the sacred mountain. The woman quickly followed. Along the way, the old monk said softly, "That item doesn't belong to the ancient temple, but it also doesn't belong to Yishan and the prophet." The woman looked at the old monk. "What do you mean?" The old monk smiled. "That Tao scripture is a divine item. In the ancient era, the heavens bestowed it to mortals to cultivate the Tao. Strictly speaking, that Tao scripture is a gift from the heavens to mortals. It's not anyone's private property. Since it's not Yishan's private property, how can we say that we're violating the commandments if we take it?" The woman was silent. The old monk continued. "Moreover, the prophet once promised our ancient temple that he was willing to hand over the Tao scripture. Because of that, we helped him back then. However, he went back on his promise. With that said, he shook his head. Be it the prophet or Yishan, they aren't good people." The woman suddenly said, "Master, I feel that Yishan isn't simple. If we snatch that Tao scripture, we might be tainted with great karma." The old monk nodded. "Yes, this person isn't simple. If not for that Tao scripture being extremely important to our ancient temple, we wouldn't have offended him. However, we have no choice. That Tao scripture is too important to us. Even if we are tainted with great karma, we can't do anything about it." The woman said in a deep voice, "Master, I've been observing the area below and I've discovered something. Do you want to hear it?" The old monk nodded. "But," the woman said, "he wants to protect that universe." The old monk said, "That's a good thing." The woman looked at the old monk. "I don't think he's a bad person. At least he's doing something right." The old monk smiled. "I didn't say that he's a bad person." The woman frowned. "Then the old monk said softly, "he has something we want, so he's our enemy. It's that simple. Right and wrong are often decided by one standpoint." The woman nodded. Disciple understands. The old monk smiled. Comet heart, when we look at things, we often have to look at it from many angles. Every angle has a different result. Take this Yi Xian for example. You say that he's a good person, but have you ever thought about why the fifth dimension has a fifth dimension tribulation? It's because the fifth dimension tribulation is a sin committed by all living beings. Yi Xian is protecting that universe. From a certain perspective, he's harming the living beings of that universe and the universe itself. From the perspective of the fifth dimension, Yi Xian is actually a bad person. Of course, from the perspective of all living beings of the fifth dimension, Yi Xian is a good person. The woman in monk clothes called Hui Xan put her palms together. Master, I understand. The old monk nodded slightly and smiled. Then let's go. Soon, the two disappeared at the end of the Xiao Dao. After Li Mian returned to the fifth dimension, he started to search for the fifth dimension Tendo. However, he did not find the fifth dimension Tendo. It was as if the fifth dimension Tendo had evaporated from the world. In the starry sky, Li Mian and the rest gathered. Mo Dao said solemnly, "This fifth dimension Tendo is indeed not simple." Li Mian looked at Mo Dao. "What do you mean?" Mo Dao said solemnly, "I've checked. In the history of the fifth dimension she has made a few moves. The fifth dimension's experts were miserably played by her. They are very afraid of her." Li Mian frowned. "Do you know what realm she has reached?" Mo Dao shook his head. "I don't know. However, she shouldn't be weak. Otherwise that old monk would not be so afraid of her. In short, we have to guard against her to prevent her from ruining things." Li Mian nodded. "Naturally. When we make a move, let it be in the dark. If she makes a move, can stop her." A self-release realm expert nodded. "All right. Don't say, I want to see how capable this so-called fifth dimension Tendo is." Li Mian nodded. Having confidence is not a bad thing. However, don't look down on anyone, including this Tendo. De nodded. "Naturally." Li Mian looked down at the fifth dimension and said softly, "I hope that everything goes smoothly this time. Is there any movement down there?" Mo Dao shook his head. "There is no movement for the time being. I suggest that we make a move now and catch them off guard." Li Mian shook his head. That Yi Xian is not that stupid. This person definitely has something to rely on. Wait for the ancient temple's people to come. Mo Dao hesitated before nodding. "All right. If the ancient temple did not come, they would not dare to make a move." While Li Mian and the rest were searching for the fifth dimension Tendo, the Tendo had stealthily arrived at the Dao world. Moon Yin held a roasted fish and slowly strolled through the starry sky. As she strolled, she arrived at the Emperor clan's territory. Moon Yin looked down at the Emperor clan's people. She chewed on the roasted fish and occasionally hummed an unknown tune. Just like that, after a quarter of an hour, the fish was completely eaten by her, leaving only a bone spur. After eating, she threw the fish bone to the side and took out a set of clothes to wear. Following that, she rubbed her face. Soon she turned into a middle-aged man. Di Linyuan. This was the appearance of Di Linyuan. Moon Yin took out a mirror and looked at herself. Then she nodded in satisfaction. The next moment she swooped down from the starry sky. Soon all the Emperor clan experts raised their heads. When they saw the person rushing down, they were shocked. Patriarch is back. The entire Emperor clan was in an uproar. Soon a figure entered the Emperor clan's city. At this moment, a voice sounded from within the city, "Where is Patriarch?" Soon the matter of Di Linyuan's appearance spread throughout the Dao world. Countless experts rushed towards the Emperor clan like crazy. At the entrance of the Emperor clan's main hall, an old man's face was pale. "My God! Who is playing with our Emperor clan?" Chapter 12:24. At the entrance of the palace, the old man's face was pale, his eyes filled with shock. In that instant, he had thought that clan leader Di Linyuan had returned to the imperial clan. However, when he entered the city and disappeared, he knew that it was not the clan leader. Someone was messing with the imperial clan. However, what shocked him was that he couldn't catch a glimpse of the other party the moment he entered the city. He also didn't know how the other party had disappeared without a trace. Who was messing with the imperial clan? And he was so powerful, killing without a blade. At this moment, countless powerful auras appeared in the sky above the imperial clan. There were more than 30 powerful auras. They were all at the self-release realm. Seeing this, the old man's face turned even paler. At this moment, two people appeared in front of the old man. These two people were the Pope and Jiang Yu of the Celestial Pavilion. The two of them did not go to the lower realm because they wanted to stay here to look for the plain-dressed woman and Di Linyuan. But now that Di Linyuan had appeared, there was only one explanation. The plain-dressed woman was gone. The Tao scripture was most likely on Di Linyuan. Moreover, Qinshin Abyss was likely to be severely injured. The Pope looked at the old man in front of him. "Your clan leader, please come out." The old man said in a low voice, "Your Excellency, the clan leader has not returned." The Pope frowned. He just stared at the old man, his expression calm, but it was chilling. The old man smiled bitterly. "Your Excellency, someone is framing the imperial clan." The Pope said in a low voice, "You said that before. Let me ask you, who is framing the imperial clan?" "Who is framing the imperial clan?" The old man hesitated, then shook his head. "I don't know either." The Pope looked at the old man, his expression unkind. "Do you think we are all idiots?" The old man looked at the Pope and said seriously, "Your Excellency, don't you think this is a little strange?" The Pope was expressionless. "Come, tell me what is strange about it." The old man said in a low voice, "Even if the clan leader has returned, he would not have returned so openly. But he has returned so openly. Isn't this the same as telling the world that he has returned?" The Pope was silent. Jiang Yu suddenly said, "You said that someone framed your imperial clan. I'm very curious, who framed your imperial clan?" The old man shook his head. "I don't know." Jiang Yu asked again, "Di Ming, you are also in the upper level of self-release. Let me ask you, who can vanish right in front of you?" Jiang Yu fell silent. This was what terrified him the most. The other party had appeared in front of him, yet disappeared without a trace. How terrifying was his strength. Up until now, he could only think of one or two people who had this kind of strength. However, there was no reason for those two people to frame an emperor clan. So who could it be? Jiang Yu suddenly looked at the Pope. The Pope nodded slightly, and the two of them spread out their divine senses. Very quickly, their divine senses covered the entire imperial clan. Seeing this, the faces of the imperial clan and the other powerhouses darkened. When had the emperor clans ever been bullied like this? Some of the monarch races wanted to attack but were stopped by Di Ming. He was well aware of the current situation of the emperor clans. The current emperor clans were no longer the emperor clans of the past. If they were not careful, they would truly be consigned to eternal damnation. Soon the Pope and Jiang Yu frowned, because they had yet to discover Di Linyuan's whereabouts. Green City Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestor Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's prince position shall be removed. Yi Lang shall take over. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. This young man was Yi Lang. Beside him were the Yi clan's elders. "Why?" At this moment, a timid voice sounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. The little girl's name was Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan was going to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl named Yi Ling bowed at the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, "Grand Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you remove him for no reason?" The Grand Elder glanced at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting?" Yi Ling was clearly afraid. She didn't dare to look at the Grand Elder, but she didn't leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed at the two elders again. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan for the mining rights in the South Mountain. He is fighting for the clan with his life on the line and his life is unknown. But now, the clan has removed his prince position with a groundless excuse. This is unfair. How dare you?" The Grand Elder suddenly said angrily, "It's not up to a little girl like you to decide whether he should be removed or not. Someone drag her away." At this moment, the new Prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The Grand Elder said coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Soon 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, even now he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new Prince Yi Lang and knew that his chance to perform had come. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang is the heir, it's everyone's wish. Why are you shouting?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry and only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death. Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show any mercy, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to see something and suddenly stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a youth was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders frowned. The great elder's eyes narrowed, his face dark and gloomy, not knowing what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger, leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there and charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. "Pui!" Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped down on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no morals. From now on, Yi Xian's position will be removed, and Yi Lang will take over. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides there were the elders of the Yi clan. "Why?" Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she had rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the hall and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you remove him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting?" Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides. "Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to remove him from the position. This is unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he is removed or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this moment, the newly appointed Prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder said coldly, "Then flog 30 times. Soon 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he is fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the newly appointed Prince Yi Lang, and he knew that this was his chance to show off. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince and it's everyone's wish. What are you yelling about?" With that, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up, but she did not cry. She just held her cheek tightly. Yi Ling looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "I'm Zhang Mu, greeting the crown prince." Yi Ling nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and he hurriedly bowed deeply. "I'm willing to go through fire and water for the crown prince." Yi Ling nodded slightly. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show any mercy, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Ling, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Ling's eyes, he understood. Immediately he grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the South Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Ling's lips curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his expression was frighteningly dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his expression turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his expression changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Ling, and just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there and charged towards Zhang Mu once more. At this time, Yi Ling suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Ling's expression turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and said, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage and he charged in front of Zhang Mu before kicking out at Zhang Mu's head. Chapter 12:25. In the sky above the Imperial clan. Di Lintian scanned his surroundings and his frown deepened. He could feel the dangerous aura around him, but he just couldn't find the other party. What was going on? Di Lintian frowned. Soon he realized that the dangerous aura had disappeared. Gone. Di Lintian slowly closed his eyes. "I never thought that there would be such a powerful cultivator in this world." Di Ming asked solemnly, "Ancestor, what should we do now?" The Imperial Descent Tendo asked, "Has our Imperial Descent clan offended anyone recently?" Di Ming pondered and said, "If we're talking about offense, it's probably because of Yi Xian and the lady in plain dress." Di Lintian looked at Di Ming. "Plain dress lady?" Di Ming nodded. "Rumor has it that the scripture is in the hands of the lady and Yi Xian. Clan Master has gone to look for the lady but there's no news of her." Di Lintian counted with his fingers and shook his head. "He's dead." Dead. Di Ming was stunned. Moments later, he shook his head and smiled bitterly. In fact, he had thought of this before because he knew Di Linyuan's personality. Even if he had obtained the scripture, he would have notified him. Di Lintian looked down at the people of the imperial family. After a moment of silence, he said, "The imperial family is tainted with bad karma. This karma is related to the woman in the plain dress and Yi Xian." As he spoke, he looked at Di Ming. "The appearance of the Tao scripture signifies the arrival of chaos. It's impossible for the monarch races to stay out of this mess." Di Ming asked solemnly, "What should we choose?" Di Lintian said softly, "You can investigate the lady in plain dress and Yi Xian and see if they are reliable." Di Ming frowned. "With them?" Di Lintian looked up at the end of the heavens. "Many times only by following the will of the heavens can one live longer. If that scripture is really in the hands of that Yi Xian, why don't we follow the will of heaven?" Di Ming remained silent. Di Lintian said softly, "Go and get in touch with them." Di Ming looked at Di Lintian. "Ancestor, what do you think about the Tao scripture?" Di Lintian smiled. "If it was in the past, I definitely would. But now, I'm already a dead person, what else can I think?" Di Ming asked solemnly, "How did our ancestor die?" Di Lintian looked at the horizon. This is how the world is, there will always be unknown powers. As he spoke, he looked at Di Ming. Now I can't care so much anymore. The future generations should focus on improving themselves. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure gradually turned illusory, and it wasn't long before he vanished completely. Di Ming opened his palm, revealing a split soul in his hand. Was Di Lintian's. Because they didn't take action, there was no consumption. The Emperor clan still had a chance to preserve their lives. As if he had thought of something, his pupils suddenly shrank. At this moment he suddenly thought of something that everyone had overlooked. When this plainly dressed woman slaughtered her way into the demonic path families, did the demonic path families not summon their ancestors? There must be an ancestor summoning. But the demonic path family still lost a sixth-dimensional self-release realm powerhouse. In other words, the ancestor of the demonic Dao family clan had not been able to stop the plain-dressed woman. If that was the case, Di Ming slowly closed his eyes and moments later, he suddenly shouted, "Elder!" As his voice trailed off, an old man appeared beside him. Di Ming said softly, "Go down to the lower realm and contact Yi Xian, see how he is. This concerns the future of the demonic path families, do not act recklessly." Elder nodded, "Understood." As soon as he finished speaking, he left silently. Di Ming looked around, his eyes were filled with worry. Just like what Di Lintian said, someone was messing with the monarch races. Could this person be Yi Xian's man? After the Pope and the others left the monarch races, the Pope and Jiang Yu didn't look too good. The two of them wanted to use this chance to annihilate the monarch races. With that, the entire Dao world would be left with only the God Palace, Celestial Pavilion, and Dao Village. The Dao Village didn't care about anything. It could be said that the God Palace and Celestial Pavilion were the rulers of the entire Dao world. After devouring the monarch races and the demonic path families, the God Palace and Celestial Pavilion's power would reach a new peak. But what they didn't expect was that Di Ming would be so decisive and use all of the monarch race's trump cards. With that, if they attacked again, both sides would suffer. But now they didn't want both sides to suffer because there was something more important, and that was the Dao scripture. The Dao scripture was more important than anything else. Jiang Yu suddenly said, "Is someone trying to frame the monarch races?" The Pope said, "Very likely." Just like what Di Ming said, even if that Di Linyuan obtained the Dao scripture, he wouldn't have returned so openly. Under normal circumstances, he would have gone as far as he could, hidden himself and cultivated the Dao scripture. He wouldn't have returned to the monarch races. But now he has returned so openly. It's highly possible that someone is trying to frame the monarch races, wanting us to have a conflict with the monarch races so that they can reap the benefits. Jiang Yu suddenly said, "Could it be the Dao village?" The Dao village. The Pope frowned, he turned to the right side of the sky. One had to admit it was possible. Because in the entire Dao world only the Dao village had such power. Besides, if they were to fight the monarch races, who would benefit the most? The Dao village. The Dao village. The Pope said solemnly, "It might be the Dao village, but I can't be sure." Jiang Yu nodded with an ugly expression. If it really was the Dao village, then things would be troublesome. At this moment, a self-release realm expert suddenly said, "Sirs, you seem to have forgotten something." Jiang Yu and the Pope looked at the old man who spoke, and the old man said, "Sirs, Pavilion Master Jiang, the Dao world's spiritual energy is disappearing quickly. If this continues, the Dao world's spiritual energy will dry up in a few decades. Our top priority now is to find that Dao spirit because the depletion of the entire Dao world's spiritual energy must be related to her." The Pope and the Pope kept silent. Spiritual energy depletion. It wouldn't affect them in the short term, but the Dao world would only get weaker in the long run. What did people rely on to cultivate? Spiritual energy, of course. Without enough spiritual energy, cultivation would be affected. If this continued, the younger generation of the Dao world would be much weaker than they were now. Jiang Yu suddenly said, "Why did the Dao spirit disappear?" The old man shook his head, "I don't know. In short, after the Dao scripture appeared, I feel that someone is targeting the Dao world. It's best for the two of you to be on guard and not let outsiders take advantage of it." The Pope nodded. "I will send people to investigate this matter." With that, he looked down and said softly, "I wonder how the lower realm is doing. Is the Dao scripture in Yi Xian's hands? If it is, Dao scripture." Behind them, the old man sighed inwardly. He knew that the Dao scripture was the most important to the Pope and the Pope. That was true, it was an existence that could help them break through. But he suddenly realized that the Dao world was in chaos. The major forces were killing each other, suspecting each other, and the Tao spirit had disappeared. It could be said that the Tao world was in a terrible situation. But everyone was still thinking about the Tao scripture. Tao scripture. The old man shook his head and sighed. Lower realm. Li Mian and the others still couldn't find the fifth dimension Tendo, so they stopped searching. On this day, 6 self-release realm experts arrived in the starry sky. Li Mian looked down at Shaman City. Meanwhile, a young man appeared in front of them. It was Yi Xian. And Lanxiu and the other women were by Yi Xian's side. Yi Xian looked at Li Mian and smiled. What are all of you doing? Li Mian smiled. Young Master Yi, don't play any tricks with us this time. Just one word, hand over the Tao scripture and we'll leave. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. It's at the ancient temple. Li Mian shook his head. Young Master Yi, I'm truly speechless. The thickness of your skin really exceeds the old man's expectations. Everyone was speechless. Meanwhile, an old monk suddenly appeared. It was the old monk from the ancient temple. Behind the old monk were 3 other monks in black robes. The 3 of them pressed their palms together and restrained their auras. They were like the vast starry sky, and they emanated an invisible pressure. When they saw them, not only did Yi Xian and the others have solemn expressions, even Li Mian and the others had solemn expressions. All 3 of them were at the upper stage of the self-release realm. Was the ancient temple so strong? At this moment, the old monk suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, there is a Buddhist scripture from my ancient temple in the study room. Young Master Yi, please return it. Yi Xian said seriously, didn't you take it already? The old monk chanted, Young Master Yi, this old monk begs you to be a good person. Don't frame my ancient temple. If there's any problem we can solve it with our fists. I'm really speechless by your slander. Everyone was speechless. Li Mian also looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, forgive me for speaking bluntly. The current you has no chance of winning. If you hand over the Tao scripture and we leave, your 5th dimension will be safe for a lifetime. The old monk quickly said, if young Master Yi is willing to hand it over, my ancient temple will immediately leave and never step into the 5th dimension. In fact, he did not want to risk his life against Yi Xian because the karma on Yi Xian was too great. However, there was no other way. The study room was too important to the ancient temple. The 2 things inside were things that the ancient temple would not give up no matter what. Yi Xian was silent. Li Mian said again, Young Master Yi, forgive me for speaking bluntly. The current you has no chance of winning. If you resist, not only will you die but the people behind you will also be buried with you. A single mistake on your part will determine the life and death of the 5th dimension. Therefore please think carefully. Yi Xian smiled and said, I've thought about it a long time ago. Li Mian looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, look, you came to steal my things, yet you still put on such a benevolent attitude. I, Yi Xian, will tell you today, even if I throw this study room into the cesspool, I will not give it to you. After saying that, he pointed the executing heaven sword at Li Mian and the others. I only have one sentence to say, life and death are indifferent. If you are not happy, then fight. Chapter 12:26. Fight. This was Yi Xian's attitude. In the starry sky, the old monk sighed. He looked at the distant Li Mian. Li Mian smiled. Young Master Ye's courage is praiseworthy, but he's a bit stupid. Kill. After saying this, the 4 self-release realm experts behind him charged down from the starry sky. There was still one who didn't attack. His mission was to defend against the 5th dimension Tendo. The 4 self-release realm experts charged down together. At this moment, the entire starry sky boiled. 4 self-release realm experts. Beside Yi Xian, 7 looked at Lanxiu. You and I will work together. Lanxiu nodded. The next moment, the 2 women charged into the sky. The 2 of them charged at one of the self-release realm experts. Although the 2 women were monsters, it was still a bit difficult for them to fight one-on-one. After all, the difference in cultivation was too great. But 2 against 1 was not a big problem. In next to no time, the 2 women obstructed a self-release realm expert. At the beginning, that self-release realm expert wanted to quickly kill Lanxiu and the other, but he quickly noticed that the 2 of them weren't as weak as he thought. He didn't dare underestimate them. At this moment, the other 3 self-release realm experts had already arrived above Yi Xian's head. Yi Xian didn't attack. 28 experts suddenly appeared in front of the 3. All the half-step self-release realm experts of the 5th dimension. This was Guan Yin's intention. He wanted these half-step self-release realm experts to fight with those self-release realm experts to temper themselves. Perhaps there might be unexpected gains that would allow them to reach self-release realm. There was still a huge difference between half-step self-release realm and self-release realm experts. It was also because of this that Guanyin wanted all the half-step self-release realm experts to attack together. 28 against 3. Yi Xian and Guanyin were a bit nervous, but they had no choice. If these half-step self-release realm experts wanted to improve, the best way was to fight self-release realm experts. Soon everyone began to fight. What surprised Yi Xian and Guanyin was that the 26 people actually blocked those 3 self-release realm experts. Moreover, they weren't at a disadvantage, both sides were evenly matched. Yi Xian and Guanyin exchanged glances. Guanyin said in a deep voice, "The 3 of them aren't that good." Yi Xian nodded. He looked at the old monk and the others in the distance. If these 28 people were to go against the person behind the old monk, they would not stand a chance. In the starry sky, Li Mian and Mo Dao's expressions were somewhat gloomy. The two of them had never expected that their own people would be blocked by the half-step self-release realm experts of the 5th dimension. At this moment, the old monk suddenly said, "For these people to be able to reach half-step void realm in such an environment, it's extraordinary in itself." Li Mian looked at the old monk. "Master, can you make your move now?" The old monk nodded. Behind him, the 3 monks suddenly disappeared. He disappeared without any warning. When the 3 of them appeared, they were already above Yi Xian and the others. And at this moment, 4 women suddenly appeared in front of them. Ajio, Situ the Azura, and the one-legged woman. Ajio took out the wine gourd at her waist and took a huge gulp. Then she looked at one of the monks. "Come." After saying that, she suddenly turned into a sword light and shot out. The sword light streaked across the starry sky, causing the world to lose color. The monk put his palms together, his expression not changing at all. He took a step forward and sent out a palm. Boom. In the starry sky, the sword light was forced to stop 1,000 feet in front of him. But in the next moment, the sword light suddenly shattered. Then a sword arrived in front of the monk. The monk slowly closed his eyes. Ajio's sword pierced through empty air. At some point, the monk was already at her original position. Ajio did not turn around. She slashed her sword to the right and took another gulp from the wine gourd at her waist. At this moment, a powerful force attacked her from behind. Ajio put down the wine gourd, turned around and stabbed out with her sword. When this sword came out, the entire world seemed to slow down. Sword sense to the limit. In the starry sky, the old monk suddenly frowned. This was a sign that his sword sense had reached the limit. Down below, Yi Xian stared at Ajio's sword. Sword sense to the limit. This sword strike made him want to draw his sword as well. This cheap senior sister was stronger than he had imagined. In the starry sky, as Ajio stabbed out with her sword, the powerful force in front of her shattered. Along with it, the space in front of her also shattered. Boom. A sword light flashed, and a figure frantically retreated hundreds of thousands of feet. It was the monk who had been fighting Ajio. The moment the monk stopped, blood spurted out from the back of his right shoulder. That sword had pierced through his right hand. However, there was still no expression on the monk's face. In the starry sky, Li Mian stared at Ajio. This woman was only at the half-step self-release realm, but she could fight a first-release realm expert. Furthermore, she had such a huge advantage. Were there so many monstrous geniuses in the 5th dimension? Ajio took out the wine gourd and took a gulp. Then she looked at the monk 100,000 feet away. Continue. As soon as she finished speaking, her figure turned illusory. In an instant, numerous afterimages flickered through that expanse of space. She was fast to the limit. The monk pressed his palms together and started chanting silently. It didn't take long for pages of golden scriptures to appear around him. After these scriptures appeared, an enormous and ancient golden Buddha suddenly appeared behind him. Along with the appearance of this ancient golden Buddha statue, everyone present felt an extremely powerful pressure. Some half-step self-release realm experts even felt like their chests were blocked, and they were unable to breathe. Down below, Yi Xian felt this invisible pressure as well. He waved his right hand and the pressure was blocked by his sword intent. Yi Xian looked at the monk. The monk suddenly raised his head and looked in front of him. The ray of sword light had already arrived. He suddenly made a light gesture with his right hand. In an instant, the giant Buddha statue behind him exploded with a beam of golden light. Then a giant golden palm print blasted on the ray of sword light. Rumble. The sword light instantly shattered. Ajio was blasted back to where she stood earlier, and the space in front of her and the monk had been transformed into nothingness. Both of them were within a spatial black hole, but the golden Buddha was still there. The monk looked at Ajio and pressed his palms together. The enormous golden Buddha behind him pressed its palms together as well. In an instant, a powerful pressure swept through the surroundings like a storm and smashed down towards Audiobook. He was trying to suppress her. Audiobook's expression was calm. She waved her right hand, and then the sword in her hand flew out and floated in front of her. Bang! A strand of formidable sword insight surged out from within the sword sect, and it forcefully blocked the formidable pressure from Qinshi. Two powerful pressures collided incessantly in midair, and the starry sky and the surroundings started to fluctuate violently like boiling water. Meanwhile, Audiobook suddenly gazed at Situ and the others. "All of you fight. Don't worry about us." As soon as she finished speaking, she took a mouthful of wine, picked up the sword in front of her, and charged forward. The monk who stood in front of Audiobook vanished on the spot as well. It didn't take long for the sounds of intense battle to resound from afar. Right at this moment, the remaining two monks above Yi Xian's group gazed at Situ, Arrow, and the one-legged woman. Situ suddenly said, "I'll fight one of them." As soon as she finished speaking, she gestured with her right hand, and a saber suddenly flew out from nowhere. In the next moment, she'd appeared in front of one of the monks along with her saber, and a single swing of her saber shook the heavens and the earth. The monk that Situ had chosen suddenly clenched his fists tightly, and then he smashed them forward. It was a head-on collision. Rumble. With two punches, two huge golden fist prints swept down from the sky. A wisp of disdain flashed through Situ's eyes as she swung her saber. Bang. At the instant that she swung her saber, the two golden fists were instantly transformed into nothingness. At the same time, Situ suddenly appeared in front of the monk with her saber in hand, and then she slashed down with her saber. This strike was soundless and didn't emit any saber chi, but everyone felt a sense of danger. In front of everyone's eyes, the monk suddenly raised his arms to block the attack. He blocked the saber with his arms. Bang! As the saber descended, the space around Situ and the monk shattered into nothingness. However, the monk forcefully withstood the saber. Situ's shocking saber had only sliced through the monk's sleeve. After the clothes were torn, everyone realized that the monk's arms were covered in golden runes. These golden runes emitted a powerful force, and it was this force that had forcefully blocked Situ's saber. Situ slashed down with her saber again after her first strike failed. Bang! This time, the saber directly forced the monk to retreat 1,000 feet away. After the monk stopped, he looked at Situ. "Miss, your saber technique is so sharp." Situ grinned, "Then I'll take another strike." As soon as she finished speaking, she took a step forward. When her step landed, she was already in front of the monk. This time, the monk didn't forcefully resist Situ's saber. Instead, he punched Situ's abdomen. Obviously, he wanted to exchange injury for injury. At this moment, Situ suddenly became illusory. T. Several saber lights suddenly streaked past the monk, and the sound of something tearing resounded. When everyone regained their senses, Situ had already returned to her original position. What a fast saber. This was the thought of everyone present. In the starry sky, the old monk looked at Situ with a solemn expression. How could there be so many monsters in the fifth dimension? What was going on? Li Mian and the other person's expressions became more and more unsightly. They hadn't expected that there would be so many experts in the fifth dimension. This was completely different from the fifth dimension they had imagined. These guys could all challenge those at a higher level. In fact, they had overlooked one point. Yi Xian had gathered all the experts in the fifth dimension. Almost all the monsters who could challenge those at a higher level had been gathered here. If the Tao world and the ancient temple could do this, then the fifth dimension would definitely not be their opponent. Simply put, the fifth dimension was more united than the Tao world. Below, although the monk had been slashed 4 times by Situ, his body had unexpectedly withstood these 4 strikes. Moreover, he had only suffered some superficial wounds. It didn't take long for the two of them to start fighting again. On the other side, the last monk looked at Arrow and the one-legged woman. Arrow and the one-legged woman didn't waste any words and directly charged out. At this moment, the old monk suddenly appeared not far away from Yi Xian. The old monk looked at Yi Xian and said, "Young Master Yi, why don't we have a spar?" Yi Xian's eyelids twitched and then he said, "You have the nerve to say that. Master, there's a difference of a few realms between us. Why don't you lower your realm and fight me?" The old monk looked at Yi Xian and said, "Young Master Yi, you have the nerve to say that? We seem to be fighting to the death, right?" Yi Xian said, "You said it was a spar." The old monk was silent for a moment and then he said, "I'm sorry, this old monk has underestimated young Master Yi's shamelessness. Young Master Yi, let's not spar, let's fight to the death." Yi Xian. P.S. I want to take a picture and attract some fans. Chapter 12:27. At that moment the old monk finally understood. He could not treat this young Master Yi with common sense. Yi Xian smiled. You're really thick-skinned to spar with me at this realm. The old monk pressed his palms together. Young Master Yi, this old monk will ask you one last time. Are you willing to hand over the study house? Yi Xian shook his head. No. The old monk nodded. I understand. With that said, he took a step forward. Behind him, a golden light shone brightly. At that moment, everyone's expression changed drastically. Ajio and Situ's voices rang in Yi Xian's mind at the same time. Be careful. Be careful. There was a solemn tone in the voice. The old monk looked at Yi Xian. He did not make a move, but an invisible pressure pressed towards Yi Xian. There was an extremely solemn voice in the pressure. Put down the butcher's knife and you will immediately become a Buddha. Put down the butcher's knife and you will immediately become a Buddha. The voice had a penetrating power that struck straight into one's heart, making one revere it. Beside Yi Xian, Guanyin frowned slightly. At that moment she actually had the thought of not resisting. Guanyin hurriedly hid behind Yi Xian. Yi Xian took a step forward and a sword intent reverberated from the sword in his hand. However, the sword intent only blocked the pressure but not the voice. The voice was like a sharp sword that pierced into Yi Xian's mind. At that moment Yi Xian's mind was filled with that voice. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Put down the butcher's knife? Put down the butcher's knife and I will die faster. As soon as he finished speaking, the voice suddenly disappeared without a trace. The old monk looked at Yi Xian and did not say a word. He had just used a divine power from the ancient temple called Words of Condemnation. However, he had underestimated Yi Xian's sword Dao innate heart. How could a powerful swordsman's heart be so easily shaken? As far as Yi Xian was concerned, his mental state was invulnerable. The old monk pressed his palms together and said softly, I've still underestimated young Master Yi. Yi Xian looked at the old monk and smiled. Master, can I ask you something? The old monk nodded. Young Master Yi, please speak. Yi Xian smiled faintly. Do you people outside of this world have compassion in your hearts? The old monk looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, we have a compassionate heart, but we do not have a compassionate heart towards everyone. A compassionate heart is for a compassionate person, and young Master Yi is not a compassionate person. Yi Xian smiled. Let me boast a little. What I'm doing now, isn't it a compassionate thing? The old monk nodded. What young Master Yi is doing is a compassionate thing to the living beings in this universe. However, to the universe itself, it is not a compassionate thing. Yi Xian smiled and said, Master, does your ancient temple care about the universe or the common people? Or should I say, do you care about the universe or the common people? The old monk was silent. Yi Xian continued, if you care about the universe, Master, having cultivated to this level, the destruction you can cause to the universe is comparable to millions of people. If you care about the common people, is it a compassionate thing for Master to kill people here today? The old monk looked at Yi Xian. If almsgiver Yi truly cares about the common people, then all the more you should hand over that study room. As long as that study room is handed over, this old monk will immediately return to the sixth dimension. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Master, you see, your goal is to snatch that study room. Whether you talk about compassion or not, it all depends on whether the other party's actions are in line with Master's interests. If it is, then you talk about compassion. If it isn't, then Master's compassion will change your words. As he said that, he shook his head and smiled again. Master, just now you told me to put down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha. I have something to ask Master. I, Yi Xian, have never taken the initiative to raise the butcher's knife. How do you want me to put it down? At this moment, Master has brought 3 super experts to the 5th dimension to take my life. It was Master who raised the butcher's knife first. If I say put down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha, it should be Master. The old monk stared at Yi Xian without saying a word. At this moment, Li Mian, who was not far away, hurriedly said, Master, he is ruining your state of mind. The old monk nodded. I know. Below, Yi Xian smiled. Ruining your state of mind, Master? Great Master, ask yourself honestly, could it be that what I said was wrong? The old monk looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, this old monk's state of mind is not something that can be ruined with just a few words. Yi Xian spread his hands. Then Master should admit that you are here to snatch the study room. In Master's heart, the so-called interests surpass everything. The old monk looked at Yi Xian and did not say a word. In the sky, Li Mian frowned. Was there something wrong with this old monk? Why did he have to talk about this with Yi Xian? Below, old Li's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Alliance Leader Yi, please delay for another 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, the array can be activated at any time. 15 minutes. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. Damn, this old monk was not easy to fool. At this moment, the old monk suddenly smiled. Young Master Yi, have you ever thought that if you hand over the study room, it will be an act of mercy? If you hand over the study room, my ancient temple and the Tao world will retreat. Many fewer people in the fifth dimension will die, right? Hand over the study room. Yi Xian looked at the old monk and said with a smile, "Why are you so outstanding, master? Even if you want to snatch something, you have to say that it is for the good of others." The old monk shook his head. It looks like there is nothing more to be said between this old monk and young Master Yi. With that said, he pressed his palms together and a powerful aura suddenly overflowed from his body. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched as he hurriedly said, "Master, I have one last thing to say." The old monk looked at Yi Xian. What? In the sky, the corners of Li Mian's mouth twitched. At this moment he wanted to beat this old monk to death. Are you too naive or too stupid? It was obvious that Yi Xian was stalling for time. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Master, I heard that the prophet came from the ancient temple." The old monk nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "What did he do in the ancient temple?" The old monk was about to speak when Li Mian suddenly said coldly, "Master, can't you tell that he is stalling for time?" The old monk looked at Yi Xian and did not say a word. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Master, you know that I am stalling for time, right?" The old monk nodded. "I know." Yi Xian was a little puzzled. "Then why does Master want me to stall for time?" The old monk pressed his palms together. "Because this old monk also needs some time." Upon hearing that, Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. "Don't tell me that you are still calling for help." The old monk smiled. "Young Master Yi guessed correctly." With that said, two old men in red monk robes suddenly appeared in the space behind him. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed when they saw these two people. Both of them were at the upper self-release realm. Even Li Mian and the old monk were shocked. There are so many experts in this ancient temple? The old monk looked at Yi Xian. "I presume that young Master Yi has prepared his trump card, right?" Smiling, Yi Xian said, "Yes." The old monk pressed his palms together. "Then let us experience it." Yi Xian turned around. Meanwhile, a voice resounded from below. "Activate the formation." The formation. As soon as the voice resounded, the entire starry sky trembled violently. After that, an enormous formation appeared behind Yi Xian, and it covered the entire starry sky. On the other hand, Yi Xian appeared at the core of the formation. He held the executing heaven sword in his hand. Endless energy converged towards him from all around him. Besides that, there was also the energy of countless stars. Upon seeing this, Li Mian and the other man's expressions immediately changed. They'd experienced this formation in the past, and Yi Xian's attack had almost killed them. Moreover, the formation seemed to have grown even stronger. The old monk gazed at Yi Xian with a calm expression. No one knew what he was thinking. Yi Xian gazed at the old monk and smiled, "Master, didn't you want to spar? We can spar now." As soon as he finished speaking, he didn't waste his breath and slashed with his sword. Wasting his breath now would be a waste of time. Sword light tore through the starry sky and the world dimmed. Needless to say, the might of Yi Xian's attack was even stronger than Ajio's attack from before. Although Ajio's sword was powerful, she was ultimately a human. As for Yi Xian, he had gathered the power of the formation and the power of the stars. This slash was not something an ordinary self-release realm expert could block. At this moment, the old monk suddenly took a step forward. With that step, a beam of Buddhist light suddenly appeared behind him. Immediately after, a huge golden Buddha statue appeared in the depths of the starry sky. The moment the golden Buddha statue appeared, a powerful pressure swept down from the depths of the starry sky like the sky was collapsing. At the same time, the old monk suddenly punched out. The moment the old monk punched out, the Buddha statue behind him suddenly opened its eyes and punched out. The power of the punch caused the starry sky to tremble. Under everyone's gaze, the Buddha statue's punch landed on Yi Xian's sword light. The sword light trembled violently and shattered, and the golden fist continued to descend. At this moment, the array formation that Yi Xian was in trembled violently, as if it could not withstand this power. Within the array formation, Yi Xian suddenly grinned. He took a step forward, and with each step, a domain appeared. Sword domain. After the sword domain appeared, it covered the entire array formation, stabilizing it. Immediately after, Yi Xian took another step forward, and with this step he stabbed out with his sword, using the sword as thought. At this moment he was thinking about the people behind him. Yi Xian will protect this five-dimensional universe. Thought of guardian. With a stab of the sword, a beam of sword light soared into the sky. Under everyone's gaze, the beam of sword light slashed at the golden fist. Boom. The golden fist exploded, and the beam of sword light soared into the sky, slashing at the golden Buddha statue. In the starry sky, the old monk put his palms together, and the Buddha statue behind him also put its palms together. In an instant, a golden light appeared before the beam of sword light. This golden light forcefully blocked Yi Xian's sword light, but the sword light was suppressing it. At this moment, Li Mian suddenly said, "Attack!" The moment he said that, Mo Dao, who was beside him, suddenly opened his palm. The next moment, a small black bell appeared in his hand. The Immortal Pavilion's supreme treasure, the Immortal Dao Bell. The Immortal Dao Bell, the Immortal Pavilion's supreme treasure. When the bell rings, people die. Mo Dao suddenly chanted an incantation. Soon, the Immortal Dao Bell in his hand trembled violently. Then, the sound of the bell echoed throughout the entire five-dimensional universe. The sound of the bell was deafening for countless people, and they bled from their orifices. Below, within the array formation, Yi Xian's expression changed greatly. Then, the space behind him suddenly split open, and a strange force slashed at him like a sharp sword as fast as lightning. At this moment, a woman suddenly appeared behind Yi Xian. The person who appeared was Zhang Wenxiu. Seeing this, Yi Xian was horrified, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "Wenxiu, my body can block it. Quickly dodge, don't do anything stupid for me." Everyone knew that Yi Xian might be able to block it, but even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. Zhang Wenxiu tightly gripped the spear in his hand, not retreating even half a step, unafraid of death. Chapter 12:28. The Celestial Dao Bell. This was the Celestial Pavilion's supreme treasure, and it was one of the top treasures in the entire Dao world. In the ancient Dao world there was a saying, "When the bell rings, people die." At this moment, a self-release realm expert activated the Celestial Dao Bell. Just how terrifying was its power. This was not something that Zhang Wenxiu could block. Yi Xian was very clear about this, so he did not even think about withdrawing his sword. The moment he did so, the Buddhist light in the sky broke through his sword light and swept down. Withdrawing the sword. Withdrawing the sword was withdrawing its aura. In an instant, Yi Xian's aura was directly suppressed by the old monk and the golden Buddha statue. However, Yi Xian did not care about this. Yi Xian directly turned around and pulled Zhang Wenxiu behind him. At this moment, a mysterious power directly slashed his body. Boom. Yi Xian and Zhang Wenxiu both retreated nearly 10,000 feet. After the two of them stopped, blood flowed out of the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. Behind him, Zhang Wenxiu's face was pale without a trace of blood. Although Yi Xian had blocked most of the power, a small part of it still penetrated into her body. Even a small portion of the power was difficult for her to block. In the starry sky, Missouri Dao frowned. "How is this possible?" There was a trace of disbelief in his voice. This was the Celestial Dao Bell. Its power was enough to instantly kill a self-release realm expert. And yet Yi Xian had blocked it. Soon he discovered something. Yi Xian had an armor. Human Emperor armor. Below, Yi Xian took a deep breath. This time, without the Human Emperor armor, he would have died without a doubt. He found that his body could not block that bird bell. Even though the Human Emperor armor blocked most of the power, his body still suffered a certain degree of damage. At this time, the golden light had arrived above his and Zhang Wenxiu's heads. Yi Xian turned to look at Zhang Wenxiu. "I don't want anyone else to die for me." Zhang Wenxiu stared at Yi Xian. "We agreed to live and die together." Yi Xian roared, "I'll die first. Before I die, you can't die. Do you understand?" Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian and said nothing. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head and a trace of hostility flashed in his eyes. "Gather." As soon as he finished speaking, the matrix trembled violently. Boundless power instantly gathered around him, and in the next moment, he slashed with his sword. The sword slashed at the golden light. Boom. The golden light instantly shattered, but at this moment, the old monk appeared in front of him out of nowhere. The old monk threw a punch. With this punch, the space in front of Yi Xian caved in. At the same time, the matrix around him became illusory. Below, Old Man Li stared at this scene and muttered, Still not enough, still not enough. In the starry sky, Yi Xian did not dodge the punch, nor could he stomp. Facing the old monk's punch, he could only take it head-on. Yi Xian stabbed with his sword. This sword went straight for the old monk's throat. However, the moment the sword stabbed out, he was directly suppressed by the old monk's punch, and the sword could not move forward. Yi Xian suddenly roared, and 3 domains suddenly appeared. Sword domain, blood domain, and death domain. As soon as the 3 domains appeared, the old monk's calm face instantly turned solemn. In the next moment, boom! Under everyone's gaze, the old monk was directly pushed back hundreds of feet by Yi Xian's sword. 3 domains. In the starry sky, Li Mian and old Li stared at Yi Xian. What kind of monster was this? He actually had 3 domains. Domain. It was already extremely rare for an ordinary person to comprehend 1 domain. But this Yi Xian actually comprehended 3 domains. What the hell was this? Li Mian and old Li's hearts were tumbling like a storm. Opposite Yi Xian, the old monk looked at Yi Xian with a trace of shock in his eyes. 3 domains. There were not many people in the ancient temple, but there were many monstrous geniuses. Over the years he had seen many monstrous geniuses, but this Yi Xian still surprised him. It was worth mentioning that Yi Xian did not use the matrix for that sword. The old monk put his palms together and said softly, "Young Master Yi, you really surprised me. In the beginning I thought the most terrifying was the person behind young Master Yi. Little did I know that young Master Yi himself is also very terrifying. If young Master Yi reaches self-release, I'm afraid no one here is a match for young Master Yi." Li Mian and Mo Dao were silent, because they knew that the old monk was right. If Yi Xian reached self-release, no one here would be a match for Yi Xian. Yi Xian did not speak. He looked around. Currently, the 5th dimension side was not at a disadvantage. Moreover, Audiobook and Situ were already suppressing the 2 monks. However, there were still 2 people behind the old monk who had not made a move. It was the 2 monks dressed in red robes. They were both at the upper self-release realm. If they made a move, the situation would instantly change. What were they going to do? Yi Xian was silent. At this time, Zhang Wenxiu appeared beside Yi Xian. Yi Xian grabbed Zhang Wenxiu's hand and said softly, "Promise me before I die, you are not allowed to die." He was really afraid that someone would die for him, Yi Xian. The dead were dead, but the living would live in guilt for the rest of their lives. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. At this time the old monk suddenly said, "Attack." After saying that, the 2 monks behind him disappeared on the spot. Clearly he was very clear that it would be difficult for him to kill Yi Xian alone, and Li Mian and Mo Dao had to guard against the Tendo of the 5th dimension. Therefore if they wanted to quickly kill Yi Xian they could only gang up on him. Seeing the 3 rushing over, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Wenxiu, retreat. Zhang Wenxiu glanced at Yi Xian, did not speak and retreated. On the other side, a woman watched the scene in front of her quietly. It was Chen Mo. However, she had no intention of making a move. Below, Yi Xian lifted his head and looked at the old monk and the other 2 who were charging at him. He said with a smile, "They really think highly of me." With that, he opened his palm and the executing heaven sword disappeared. Then an illusory Xiaota appeared between his brows. Prison pagoda. The moment the prison pagoda appeared, the old monk's expression changed, and he instinctively slowed down. At this time, a voice suddenly resounded in Yi Xian's mind, "Return." In an instant all the Tao laws returned, and then the prison pagoda above Yi Xian's head lit up. 9 different colors of light. Seeing this, the old monk's expression changed, "Retreat." Right at this moment Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously, "Imprison." As soon as he finished speaking, 2 blood-red words, "prisoner," suddenly appeared above the heads of the 2 red-clothed monks who had rushed up to Yi Xian. As soon as the 2 words appeared, 2 mysterious forces locked the 2 red-clothed monks. Their expressions changed drastically and they wanted to resist. However, they noticed to their astonishment that the 2 forces had sealed their cultivations. So, they exchanged glances, clenched their right hands into fists, and then smashed forward. Their bodies were forcefully broken. However, the 2 blood-red, imprisoned characters still locked onto them. At this moment both of them were horrified. What sort of force could actually seal their cultivations? After all, both of them were at the high self-release realm. At this moment the old monk in the distance suddenly attacked. In the starry sky behind him, a huge golden Buddha suddenly punched out. With a punch, a 10,000-meter-long fist mark swooped down from the starry sky. The powerful fist force shook the starry sky. And at this moment Yi Xian, who was below, suddenly raised his head, and a trace of hostility flashed in his eyes. Within the prison pagoda, a dazzling beam of light suddenly erupted from the first level. This beam of light directly shot up into the sky, and the moment the fist came into contact with this beam of light, it vanished into thin air. Immediately after, the beam of light directly blasted the golden Buddha statue in the starry sky. Bang! The golden Buddha statue disappeared without a trace. It was directly obliterated. The old monk's eyes were filled with disbelief when he witnessed this scene. What sort of force is that? Li Mian and Mo Dao had disbelief on their faces as well. They'd sensed the aura of death from that ray of light just now. What's that Xiaota? Both of them stared fixedly at the Xiaota above Yi Xian. At this moment the old monk suddenly looked in front of Yi Xian. At this moment, the bodies of the two red-robed monks were growing more and more illusory. Both of them were imprisoned within them and couldn't move at all. The two red-robed monks exchanged glances, and then they sat down cross-legged on the ground, pressed their palms together, and began to silently chant scriptures. They didn't resist, because it was useless. The two prisoner characters above their heads contained a great Tao that far surpassed the two of them. The two of them could not break through it at all, especially when their cultivations were sealed. They were waiting for death. Both of them were very calm in the face of death. Yi Xian gazed at the two monks in front of him. At this moment, his expression was unsightly because he'd consumed too much energy. After the Tao laws of the prison pagoda were activated, its might was tremendous, but it consumed a great deal of energy as well. At this moment he felt something within his body rapidly flowing away. Lifespan. Meanwhile, Big Sister's voice resounded in Yi Xian's mind. Your lifespan is rapidly decreasing, so it's best that you stop. Otherwise you'll die in an hour at most. An hour. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes and smiled bitterly. There was a powerful godly item that had gathered all the Tao laws with great difficulty, but he had to pay the price with his lifespan. Wasn't it too tragic for him? Without much thought, Yi Xian waved his right hand, and the two red-robed monks were directly sent into the prison pagoda by Yi Xian. Although the two monks were extremely powerful, he was still at ease with Big Sister suppressing them together. And he hurriedly put away the prison pagoda. This really consumed too much energy. Not only did it consume his lifespan, but it also consumed his mental strength and soul power. As for his Xian Qi, there was no need to even mention it. In that short period of time, it had almost drained all of his Xian Qi. Yi Xian looked at the old monk in the distance. Come, continue. Right now he wanted to rest. However, he couldn't show weakness. Once he showed weakness, the other party would definitely not let it go. The old monk looked at Yi Xian for a moment, then opened his palm. Come. As his voice fell in the distant ancient temple, a black light suddenly shot into the sky. The next moment, that black light directly passed through the barrier of the universe and flew towards the starry sky of the fifth dimension. Below, Big Sister's voice suddenly resounded in Yi Xian's mind. A godly item has descended into the fifth dimension. P.S. Thank you to those who voted recently. Thank you everyone for your support. Chapter 1229. A divine object descending into the fifth dimension. Yi Xian frowned. Clearly, the old monk saw that he was in a weak state and did not want to give up. This was a bit troublesome. Yi Xian asked in his heart, Big Sister, can I still use the prison pagoda? Big Sister said, yes. However, I'm afraid your lifespan is about to run out. Therefore, I don't recommend you use the prison pagoda again. Yi Xian was silent. If he did not use the prison pagoda, how could he fight against the ancient temple in the Tao realm? Now he had to stop the old monk and the divine object that was about to arrive. Otherwise everyone would die. Perhaps the ancient temple would not slaughter the experts of the fifth dimension, but the Tao realm would. He could never place his hopes on the mercy of the enemy. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. This time no one would help him. He had to rely on himself. Below, Guan Yin and Wen Xiu looked at Yi Xian. They knew that if Yi Xian could not withstand this, the fifth dimension would instantly collapse. Then the entire fifth dimension would either be slaughtered or enslaved. This battle was related to the fate of the fifth dimension. If he lost, there was no need to wait for the fifth dimension calamity. At this moment, the space above everyone's head suddenly split open. Then, a long blade appeared in everyone's line of sight. As soon as the saber appeared, the space it passed through turned into nothingness, before turning into a deathly stillness. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind, Buddhist Commandment Blade. This is one of the three great treasures of the ancient temple. This blade is blessed by the Buddhist Dharma of the ancient temple's senior monks. It naturally restrains evil and evil spirits. In addition, this blade has the power of reincarnation. Once you are hit by it, you will immediately enter the reincarnation hell, never to be reincarnated. The power of this object is even above that of the Tendo bell. This was Big Sister's voice. Yi Xian was somewhat puzzled. Big Sister, why do you know so much about the ancient temple's treasures? Big Sister was silent for a moment, then said, have you forgotten where teacher came from? Hearing this, Yi Xian understood. Back then, Mr. had come out of the ancient temple. Yi Xian looked at the old monk. The old monk opened his palm and the Buddhist commandment blade fell into his hand. The moment he held the blade, the old monk's aura suddenly changed. Previously, the old monk's aura was gentle, but now, the old monk's aura turned into an oppressive one. Furthermore, there was a hint of malice within the oppressive aura. Danger. This was what Yi Xian was feeling at the moment. This old monk was an upper self-release realm expert to begin with. Now that he obtained such a divine item, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. How could he block it? Yi Xian took a deep breath and walked towards the old monk. In fact, his best choice now was to temporarily avoid the brunt of the attack. However, he could not retreat. Once he retreated, everyone present would die. Of course, he still had another choice, and that was to hand over the study. However, if he were to hand over the study room just like that to save his life, it would be better to die than to exchange that method for survival. As long as one was alive, one had to fight for something. Thus Yi Xian chose to fight. Yi Xian walked towards the old monk. He walked very slowly, and in his hand was the Executing Heaven sword. The Executing Heaven sword wasn't his sword, but now, it had actually fused perfectly with him. As if it had sensed its master's fighting spirit, the Executing Heaven sword suddenly trembled violently, and numerous sword hums shook the starry sky. In the starry sky, Li Mian and the other two stared fixedly at Yi Xian. They still hadn't attacked. Their mission was very simple, and that was to stop the fifth dimension Tendo that might attack. As for the fifth dimension Tendo, he wasn't in the fifth dimension at all. In the starry sky of the Tao world, Mu Nianyan was walking slowly with a fish in her hand. Along the way, a voice rang out from beside her. He should be in danger now. Mu Nianyan didn't speak. The voice spoke again. Are you really not going to help? Mu Nianyan suddenly stopped and said softly, I don't have much time left. In my limited time, what I can do is not to help him defeat his opponents, but to let him have the strength to face any difficulties. What he needs is to grow. After saying that, she walked into the distance. The voice suddenly asked, You don't have much time left? What do you mean? Mu Nianyan smiled. Nothing. The voice said, What are you hiding from me? Mu Nianyan chuckled and didn't speak. Soon she disappeared into the depths of the starry sky. In the fifth dimension, Yi Xian was still walking slowly towards the old monk. At this moment he was actually very weak and he couldn't even hide his weakness. The old monk looked at Yi Xian in front of him. He didn't speak anymore and swung his saber. One saber. Just one saber, and everyone's expression changed. That saber slashed out and a dark gray saber aura cut through the starry sky, heading straight for Yi Xian. Wherever the dark gray saber aura passed, space turned into nothingness, spiritual energy collapsed, and everything returned to its origin. This saber directly injured the origin of the fifth dimension. Seeing this saber, Zhang Wenxiu's expression changed drastically. She directly rushed towards Yi Xian. She knew that the current Yi Xian couldn't block this saber. Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Guan, stop her. As soon as he said that, Guan Yin directly blocked in front of Zhang Wenxiu. Guan Yin looked at Zhang Wenxiu. Believe in him. Believe in him. Zhang Wenxiu clenched her fists and stared at Yi Xian in the distance. At this moment, she suddenly realized that she really cared about this man in front of her. When did this start? Zhang Wenxiu was somewhat at a loss. In the distance, Yi Xian looked at the saber aura coming towards him. He knew that this time he could only take it on himself. No one could help him. He could only rely on himself. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. At this time, the saber aura was already several dozen zhang in front of him. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Boom. A blood-red light shot out from his body and into the sky. In an instant, the entire sky was directly dyed blood red. Seeing this scene, Li Mian and Mo Dao looked at each other, a trace of shock in their eyes. What kind of bloodline power was this? It was actually so powerful. Mo Dao suddenly said in a low voice, This bloodline is even stronger than the demonic path bloodline and the emperor bloodline. Li Mian nodded. He stared at Yi Xian below, This person's background is extraordinary. I'm afraid there's someone behind him. Generally, people with powerful bloodlines would definitely have someone behind them. The moment Yi Xian activated his bloodline, the executing heaven sword in his hand instantly turned into a blood-red sword. The sword changed according to its master. Meanwhile, the saber aura had arrived in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian took a step forward, and a sea of blood appeared beneath his foot. Yi Xian slashed with his sword. Bang! An expanse of blood-red light exploded apart. The saber aura was forcefully blocked by Yi Xian's sword. However, Yi Xian's figure trembled violently within the sea of blood. Because he'd merely blocked the saber aura, he hadn't destroyed it. Suddenly the old monk swung his saber once more. This attack was even stronger than the previous one. A wisp of viciousness flashed through Yi Xian's eyes, and then he suddenly roared furiously. The blood domain appeared, and it was unprecedentedly strong after he activated his bloodline. Yi Xian slashed once more. This attack contained a single thought. He slashed with his sword. Bang! The saber aura in front of Yi Xian was instantly slashed into pieces. However, another saber aura tore through the air and arrived before him. Yi Xian swung his sword horizontally, and a blood-red ray of light shot forward. Bang! Yi Xian instantly retreated almost 3 kilometers away. As soon as he stopped moving, the sound of a bell suddenly resounded in the starry sky above him. The Tendo bell. Mo Dao had attacked again. The strength that Yi Xian had demonstrated scared the two of them. Such a monstrous genius had to be eliminated right now, otherwise he would definitely bring calamity to them in the future. At the instant that the bell resounded, the space above Yi Xian had split apart, and then a strange force tore through space and slashed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian raised his sword and stabbed forward, and a ray of blood-red light flickered on the tip of his sword. Bang! In an instant, a ray of blood-red light erupted. Yi Xian retreated another 3 kilometers, but before he could stop, the old monk suddenly appeared in front of him. The old monk silently recited a scripture, and then he swung his saber down. At the instant that the saber was swung, a strange force flickered on the blade. The power of samsara. Yi Xian blocked it with his sword. Bang! A ray of blood-red light rippled around Yi Xian as Yi Xian retreated explosively. As he retreated, the old monk appeared in front of him once more, and he slashed down with his saber once more. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stomped his right foot. 3 domains suddenly appeared. At the instant that they appeared, the old monk was directly suppressed, and Yi Xian stabbed forward with his sword. At this moment, Yi Xian's sword was faster than the old monk's saber. Yi Xian's sword was aimed at the old monk's throat, and the old monk's saber was slashing towards Yi Xian's head. It was an internecine situation. The old monk did not retract his saber, and Yi Xian did not retract his sword. Bang! Bang! As 2 earth-shattering explosions rang out, the old monk and Yi Xian retreated frantically. The two of them retreated for a good 10,000 feet. The moment Yi Xian stopped, a cracking sound came from his body. Human King armor. The Human King armor that the old blacksmith had forged for him had cracked. Not only that, but a mysterious force was corroding the Human King armor, and it was disappearing at a visible speed. The power of samsara. The Human King armor actually could not block the power of samsara. In the distance, a golden kasaya had appeared on the old monk's body. It was this golden kasaya that had blocked Yi Xian's sword. The old monk looked at Yi Xian in the distance. He put his palms together and said softly, "Young Master Yi, you have given me too many surprises." He really did not expect that Yi Xian could rely on his own strength to fight him to this point. One had to know that he was several realms higher than Yi Xian. Most importantly, he was holding the Buddhist commandment saber just now. It could be said that with the Buddhist commandment saber, there were few who could match him in the same realm. But this Yi Xian was actually on par with him just now. He knew that it was because of Yi Xian's bloodline. He was shocked by this bloodline. What bloodline was this? It was actually so strong. Without thinking much, the old monk suddenly walked towards Yi Xian with the saber in hand. He walked very quickly and a powerful aura swept across the field. This time, there was nothing that could block Yi Xian's Buddhist commandment saber. This saber would definitely kill Yi Xian. Soon, the saber's momentum was like a flood, sweeping the surroundings and the starry sky trembled. Chapter 1230. It was obvious that the old monk wanted to end Yi Xian with a single slash. The strength that Yi Xian displayed was simply too terrifying. Even the old monk was fearful. Yi Xian was able to block that slash earlier because of Yi Xian's armor. But now Yi Xian didn't have any armor. The old monk was confident in this slash. At that moment, the executing heaven sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly turned into a blood-red sword. The sword left behind by the man in green. Sword spirit. The sword spirit suddenly transformed into a beam of blood-red light that entered the space between Yi Xian's brows. Bang! In an instant, the last bit of rationality in Yi Xian's eyes vanished. He had gone completely mad. Bang! A monstrous bloodline aura shot into the sky and shook the starry sky. There was a world of difference between half-mad and completely mad. After going completely mad, Yi Xian's aura and strength skyrocketed. A powerful aura of malevolence and killing intent swept towards the surroundings. In an instant, the entire starry sky was filled with killing intent and malevolence. At that moment, Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. His sword collided with the old monk's saber. Bang! Under everyone's gazes, the old monk instantly retreated 3 kilometers. The blood-red sword light didn't disperse. It was still on the saber. At that moment, a mysterious force suddenly appeared on the saber. The power of Buddhism. It could purify the murderous aura and malevolence. But at that moment, the saber was actually unable to purify the murderous aura and malevolence on the sword energy. It was the murderous aura and malevolence that came from the bloodline. The old monk held the saber with both hands and resisted Yi Xian's blood-red sword energy. Yi Xian was about to attack when the sound of a bell resounded in the distant sky. Tendo bell. Mo Dao had attacked again. Yi Xian suddenly turned around and slashed down with his sword. In front of him, the strange power was directly shattered by his sword. Mo Dao and Li Mian's expressions changed when they saw that. Yi Xian has become so strong? Suddenly Li Mian said, "It's that sword." Mo Dao looked at the sword in Yi Xian's hand. This sword was even stronger than the executing heaven sword. Where did Yi Xian get so many divine objects? Below, Yi Xian walked towards the old monk. With every step he took, a bloody light would appear beneath his feet. It was true that every step he took was bloody. Far away, the old monk looked at Yi Xian with a grim expression. Because at that moment, not only did his Buddhist commandment blade fail to purify Yi Xian's killing intent and hostility, but it was almost eroded by Yi Xian's killing intent and hostility. What kind of bloodline power was this? The old monk was even more puzzled. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. A blood-red sword light tore through the battlefield. The old monk narrowed his eyes and slashed down. Golden light flashed on the Buddhist commandment blade. As soon as the blade fell, a blood-colored sword chi tore through the air. Bang! The blood-red light and golden light exploded. The old monk instantly retreated hundreds of meters, while Yi Xian retreated hundreds of meters. However, the old monk's expression grew even more solemn. Because he realized that Yi Xian's aura was skyrocketing. Yi Xian was growing stronger and stronger. Most importantly, Yi Xian's body possessed extremely powerful healing abilities. Yi Xian had a huge advantage in a battle of attrition. The old monk looked up at Li Mian and Mo Dao. "Please use your trump cards if you have any." Li Mian and Mo Dao fell silent. In the battlefield, their people had been blocked by Yi Xian's people. Although the two of them hadn't made a move yet, their goal was to resist the fifth dimension's heavenly Tao. At this moment, the old monk suddenly said, "If the 3 of us join forces and can kill him, then that's naturally good. If not, then we'll retreat." Li Mian and Mo Dao exchanged glances and nodded. At this moment, they naturally wouldn't play any tricks. Because at this moment, the death of the old monk from the ancient temple wouldn't benefit them at all. Right now, Yi Xian's threat was even greater. The old monk suddenly charged out with his blade. Around him, rays of golden light surged into his blade. Seeing the old monk attack, Li Mian and Mo Dao didn't hesitate anymore and immediately charged towards Yi Xian. 3 against 1. Although Yi Xian had the support of his bloodline and the sword spirit, he definitely couldn't defeat the 3 people in front of him. In fact, the moment Yi Xian went completely mad, he had already lost half of the battle. Completely mad meant that he had lost his rationality. If no one suppressed him, the greatest threat to the 5th dimension would be him, Yi Xian. Unfortunately, the old monk and the others didn't know this. Otherwise, they would immediately leave. In the starry sky, the 3 super strong people dashed towards Yi Xian. The space where Yi Xian was directly crushed by the 3 strong energies and became illusory. Right at this moment, a woman suddenly appeared before Li Mian and Mo Dao. It was Chen Mo. Li Mian and Mo Dao were slightly stunned when they saw this woman. It didn't take long for Li Mian to say, "Stop her." As soon as he finished speaking, he charged downwards. As for Mo Dao, he charged towards Chen Mo. Chen Mo didn't stop Li Mian. With her current strength, she could only stop a self-release realm expert. It didn't take long for the old monk and Li Mian to arrive in front of Yi Xian. Suddenly, an illusory Xiaota appeared between Yi Xian's brows. The old monk and Li Mian's expressions changed drastically when they saw this illusory pagoda, and they didn't hesitate to turn around and retreat. This retreat caused them to retreat over 10 kilometers away. Xiaota. Just now, Xiaota instantly killed 2 upper self-release realm experts. Not to mention Li Mian, even the old monk was extremely shocked. He was extremely fearful of Yi Xian's Xiaota, because he wasn't confident that he could stop Xiaota. For a time, the old monk and Li Mian didn't dare move. On the other hand, Yi Xian didn't stop. He didn't charge towards the old monk, and he charged towards the monk who was being suppressed by wine instead. Actually, the monk wasn't a match for wine anymore. However, it was difficult for wine to kill him as well. But now that Yi Xian had joined the battle, the situation had changed. The monk suddenly turned around and a blood-red ray of sword light slashed over. The monk's pupils constricted slightly. He pressed his palms together, and a ray of golden light surged out from within him. However, the ray of golden light had just come into contact with Yi Xian's sword light and instantly dispersed. Bang! The monk was pushed back, but right at this moment, another ray of sword light appeared behind him. What? The monk's expression changed drastically, and he suddenly turned around and slapped out with his palm. Bang! His palm forcefully blocked Ajio's sword, but at this moment, a sword suddenly pierced through the back of his neck. The monk's eyes opened wide, and then his body gradually dissipated. Seeing the monk being killed by Yi Xian, the old monk's expression instantly turned gloomy. He stared fixedly at Yi Xian. He suddenly realized that even if the 5th dimension Tendo didn't attack, Yi Xian didn't seem to be easy to kill. Opposite Yi Xian, Wine was also looking at Yi Xian. Her eyes were filled with vigilance because she sensed killing intent from Yi Xian. The current Yi Xian didn't look normal at first glance. Wine looked at Yi Xian. "Little junior brother, you wouldn't be thinking of hitting me, right?" Yi Xian was just about to attack when the blood-red sword in his hand suddenly trembled. In the next moment, Yi Xian turned around and charged towards the monk in the distance. Wine was slightly stunned when she saw this scene, and then she said softly, "The sword is guiding." The old monk noticed this as well. In the beginning, he was rather happy when he saw Yi Xian attack Wine because it seemed like Yi Xian's mind wasn't normal and he couldn't distinguish between friend and foe. However, when Yi Xian turned around to kill another monk, he was stunned. The sword is guiding. Although Yi Xian didn't have a mind, the sword in his hand did. The sword was guiding Yi Xian. "Motherfucker," the old monk suddenly said, "Retreat. Retreat." When he heard the monk in the distance didn't hesitate at all. He turned around and vanished into the starry sky. Sidu was slightly stunned. He fled a little too quickly. The old monk took a deep and long glance at Yi Xian, and then he turned around and left. He knew that he couldn't do anything to Yi Xian now. An expert at the upper self-release realm could suppress Yi Xian, but he couldn't kill Yi Xian and might even lose to Yi Xian, who had gone completely mad. Li Mian and Situ Yin immediately retreated when they saw the old monk and the others leave. It didn't take long for the experts of the ancient temple and the Tao world to leave. Guan Yin and the others instantly heaved sighs of relief when they saw this scene, but it didn't take long for them to look at Yi Xian. What about Yi Xian? Can he recover his mind? Everyone was looking at Yi Xian. Yi Xian stood in the starry sky with a sword in his right hand while his body trembled incessantly. Boundless evil energy and killing intent were still around him. His aura was still rising madly. It seemed like it was endless, and it was extremely shocking. Actually, there was a serious problem, and it was that his aura was rising too quickly, and his body was slightly unable to endure it. After all, his body was already heavily injured when he forcefully utilized the pagoda of prison earlier. Now, his bloodline energy was rising madly, and his body was actually unable to endure it. The most important problem was that no one here could suppress his bloodline. There was once someone who could, and it was the 5th dimension Tendo. But now the 5th dimension Tendo wasn't here. Meanwhile, Zhang Wenxiu was about to go over, but he was stopped by a Jew. A Jew shook her head. "It's dangerous." Yi Xian was in an extremely dangerous state right now, and he might attack anyone who approached him. Zhang Wenxiu gazed at a Jew. "Can you suppress his bloodline?" A Jew shook her head. "No." The bloodline energy within Yi Xian was truly too formidable. Only someone who was much stronger than Yi Xian could possibly suppress the bloodline energy within Yi Xian's body. Zhang Wenxiu gazed at Yi Xian from afar, and her eyes were filled with worry. A Jew looked at the sword in Yi Xian's hand. "Sir, can you suppress his bloodline?" The reason why Yi Xian had gone completely mad was because of this sword. The sword trembled slightly as though it was replying. A Jew frowned slightly. The sword's reply was, yes, she could not suppress Yi Xian's bloodline, but she could make Yi Xian's bloodline even crazier. A Jew gulped down a mouthful of wine and then said, "What sword?" "I submit." At the side, Qian Emo looked at Yi Xian and slowly clenched her fists. Right now Yi Xian's bloodline energy was at its strongest, and if she were to dual cultivate with him now. P.S. Brothers, do you have any good movies to recommend? Leave them and I will look through them one by one and then reply. Chapter 1231. At that moment, Qian Emo suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian subconsciously wanted to attack, but he was affected by the sword spirit. Qian Emo grabbed Yi Xian's shoulder with her right hand. In the next moment, she and Yi Xian disappeared from the scene. The expressions of Zhang Wenxiu and Lan Xiu and the others instantly changed, and they were about to pursue her when a Jiu said abruptly, "She won't harm her and we can't harm her." The current Yi Xian wasn't someone Qian Emo could fight against. If Qian Emo harbored evil thoughts towards Yi Xian, that sword would protect Yi Xian. As long as that sword didn't affect Yi Xian, two Qian Mos wouldn't be able to do anything to Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Guanyin suddenly appeared before Elderly. Elderly remained silent. Guanyin looked at Elderly, strengthen the array formation at all costs. Elderly nodded. Understood. The array from before was very powerful. However, it was still not enough against a super expert like the old monk. If not for Yi Xian having the world prison pagoda, the fifth dimension would have already been defeated. Elderly turned around and left. He had already seen the flaws in the array formation. What he needed to do now was to strengthen the formation at all costs. Because Yi Xian was strong enough. There was no need to worry about whether Yi Xian could withstand it or not. What they had to worry about now was whether the formation was strong enough. Guanyin looked at the half-step self-release realm experts around him. Just now, when the 28 half-step self-release realm experts were fighting against the self-release realm experts, these 28 people had actually suppressed their opponents. From this, it could be seen that the difference between half-step escape 1 and upper escape 1 was not especially big. Of course, she was very clearly aware that that was only when facing an ordinary self-release realm expert. If she faced someone like the old monk, then she would absolutely not be a match. However, after this battle, those half-step self-release realm powerhouses' gains were not small. It was worth mentioning that in this battle, Guanyin still did not send the sword sex swordsman to fight. This was a sword hidden in the fifth dimension. It had to be used at a critical moment. Guanyin turned around and left. She now realized that the overall level of the fifth dimension was still not good enough. She still had to speed up. In the battlefield, Audiobook looked into the depths of the starry sky and drank. No one knew what she was thinking. At this moment, Sidhu walked to her side and asked, "What do you think?" Audiobook shook her head. "It's not a true self-release." Sidhu nodded. Indeed. The banished immortal island was no ordinary place. An invincible super swordsman once lived there. As the successor of that person, the two of them were much more knowledgeable than ordinary people. Audiobook continued, "Looks like the sixth dimension and the Tao world aren't the limit." Sidhu looked at Audiobook and did not speak. Wine suddenly turned to look at Arrow in the distance. "You're still missing one thing." Sidhu also looked at Arrow. It could be said that apart from the two of them, Arrow's strength was the most terrifying. Arrow looked at Audiobook, who said, "Follow me." With that, she turned around and left. Arrow did not reject. She followed. Her talent and strength were top-notch, but most of the time, talent alone was not enough. She also needed a bit of luck. Sidhu suddenly pointed at Seven in the distance. Audiobook looked at Seven and shook her head. "I can't." Seven. In terms of talent, no one here could compare to Seven. She was a true monster. Her current sword path attainments were actually not lower than Audiobook's, but her realm was a little weaker. One could say that if Seven reached half a step self-release, even Audiobook might not be able to beat her. Seven looked at Audiobook and Arrow and did not say a word. Below, Lan Xiu and Zhang Wenxiu did not leave. The two of them were still worried about Yi Xian. Seven suddenly said, "That sword is very strong." The two of them looked at Seven and she said softly, "That woman can't hurt him, don't worry." With that, she turned around and left. As a swordsman, she could feel how strong the sword in Yi Xian's hand was. And Lan Xiu and Zhang Wenxiu looked at each other and then the two of them turned around and left. The starry sky regained its calm. In front of the fifth dimension's barrier, a woman also turned around and left. This person was Wenjiaruo. She had always been paying attention to the fifth dimension, the Tao world, and the ancient temple. She was very shocked. First, she did not expect the ancient temple to be so strong that they could easily send out so many self-release experts. Second, she did not expect that Yi Xian could actually block the alliance of the Tao world and the fifth dimension. Yi Xian was very strong, and the fifth dimension was not as weak as she thought. The ancient temple was even stronger than she expected. The current sixth dimension also needed to change. At least, it needed to become more united. On this day when Jarua's heart was heavy, because she felt pressure, the old monk brought a monk back to the foot of the sacred mountain. This time, the ancient temple could be said to have suffered heavy losses. They lost 3 super experts, 2 of whom were at the upper self-release realm. Did they underestimate Yi Xian? No. This time they really did not underestimate Yi Xian. The ancient temple sent so many experts down at once, and they even joined forces with the Tao world. In terms of lineup, it could be said that they completely crushed the fifth dimension. Moreover, he used the Buddhist commandment blade. However, they were defeated. Moreover, they were defeated miserably. At this time, a white-robed monk suddenly appeared in front of the 2 of them. Seeing this white-robed monk, the 2 of them hurriedly bowed respectfully. Governor Elder. The Governor Elder said softly, "Didn't that Miss Mu make a move?" The old monk shook his head. "Not yet." The Governor Elder said softly, "Then it seems that we have underestimated this young benefactor Yi Xian." The old monk looked at the Governor Elder. "Governor Elder, this Yi Xian's bloodline is extremely strange. Even the Buddhist commandment blade can't do anything to it." The Governor Elder said, "There is only one explanation. This bloodline ancestor's cultivation is above the previous elders. Their Dharma cultivation is inferior to the bloodline origin. Of course, this is also because this Yi Xian's bloodline awakened to a deep enough degree that the Buddhist commandment blade can't purify it." The old monk frowned slightly. "This ancestor Yi Xian?" The Governor Elder's right hand gently turned the prayer beads in his hand. "It seems that we still know too little about this young Master Yi. The karma of his body is far from being a prophet. Both of you rest well. I will personally go and understand." The old monk was a little surprised. "Governor Elder, are you going down the mountain?" The Governor Elder said with a smile. "After cultivating for so many years, I also want to go out and see the scenery. Reading 10,000 books is not as good as walking 10,000 miles. Just take it as a stroll and relax." The old monk and the other monk put their palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. The Governor Elder smiled and walked down the mountain. After a while, he disappeared at the foot of the mountain. After a long silence, the old monk and the other monk also disappeared at the end of the Shaodao. In fact, the ancient temple had a rule. It did not care about the matters at the foot of the mountain. Therefore, the people of the world knew very little about the ancient temple. However, this time, the ancient temple had to care because the Tao scripture and Buddhist scripture were very important to the ancient temple. Tao world. On the way back to the Tao world, Li Mian and Mo Dao's expressions were extremely grave. They did not expect that they would lose this time after joining hands with the Tao world. Moreover, the fifth dimension Tendo did not make a move from the beginning to the end. At this time, Mo Dao suddenly said, "We have to find out the power of Yi Xian's bloodline and that Xiao Ta." Li Mian nodded. Yi Xian's greatest threat to them was the power of bloodline and that Xiao Ta. These 2 were really too great a threat to them. That Xiao Ta directly killed 2 self-released tier elites, and that power of bloodline. After Yi Xian activated the power of bloodline, it was like he had changed into a different person. He could completely face an upper-level self-released tier elite head-on. Moreover, this upper-level self-released tier elite was holding a super divine tool. This was practically like cheating. Too freakish. Mo Dao sighed in a low voice. "This person must not be left alive. Otherwise, our Tao world will be in danger in the future." Li Mian nodded, deeply agreeing. What cultivation level was Yi Xian now? Just the shattering void tier. If Yi Xian reached the self-release tier with his terrifying power of bloodline and a pile of terrifying divine equipment, who in the Tao world could stop him? This kind of person could really threaten the Tao world. Li Mian suddenly said, "No matter what, we have to make the Pope pay attention to Yi Xian this time. We can't treat Yi Xian with any contempt or carelessness. Otherwise, our Tao world will pay a terrible price in the future." Mo Dao nodded. This time, the Tao world's losses were smaller than the ancient temples, but next time might not be the same. Especially a monster like Yi Xian. If Yi Xian was given more time, the consequences would be simply unimaginable. Now, the 2 of them were most worried that the Pope and the others still did not know how terrifying Yi Xian was. It wasn't just Yi Xian, the overall strength of the fifth dimension was not as weak as the Tao world thought. There were a few people in the fifth dimension that could actually fight a self-release tier elite. This was extremely terrifying. Soon, Mo Dao and the others quickened their pace. Qian Mo brought Yi Xian to the ice mountain where they had first met. She turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's entire body was blood red, and his body emitted an extremely powerful hostility and killing intent. Yi Xian's eyes were like a sea of blood, extremely frightening. Qian Mo waved her right hand, and the World Prison Pagoda in Yi Xian's body appeared in her hand. She covered the World Prison Pagoda with her right hand and sealed it. Then she looked at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian's power of bloodline was completely stimulated. If they dual cultivated at this time, she would obtain great benefits. Qian Mo looked at Yi Xian for a long time. After a long time she said, "Doing it once or 10 times is the same. What's the difference?" After saying that, she waved her right hand, and Yi Xian's clothes instantly turned to ashes. Yi Xian was about to make a move, but the sword in his hand trembled. The sword spirit couldn't make him sober, but she could affect Yi Xian because she had the same attribute as Yi Xian. Of course, there was another more important reason, and that was that she wasn't affected by Yi Xian. If it was the Executing Heaven sword, it wouldn't work. Once the Executing Heaven sword turned red, it would be the same as Yi Xian without any intelligence. Moreover, the Executing Heaven sword wouldn't resist Yi Xian. However, the sword spirit was different. Yi Xian's baleful aura and hostility weren't able to affect her. At this time, Qian Mo suddenly pulled the silk belt on her waist. With this pull, her clothes fell off and the two of them looked at each other. Qian Mo looked at Yi Xian. She walked in front of Yi Xian and began. Chapter 1232. Dual Cultivation. This time, Qian Mo was not as casual as before because she was clear-headed. She needed to borrow Yi Xian's bloodline power to break through, not to enjoy it. When the two of them interacted, Qian Mo's aura suddenly soared. If she had guessed correctly, the current Yi Xian was most suitable for dual cultivation because Yi Xian's bloodline had been completely activated. This was also beneficial to Yi Xian. This was because the killing intent and hostility on Yi Xian's body was gradually decreasing. Although they were in an ice mountain, the two of them were like two balls of fire. Qian Mo looked at Yi Xian below her. She looked at Yi Xian with calm eyes. Feelings? She naturally did not have any feelings for Yi Xian. Her and Yi Xian becoming like this could be said to be an ill-fated relationship. No, the first time could be said to be ill-fated, but this time, Qian Mo felt complicated. Deal. Strictly speaking, she and Yi Xian were making a deal, but she did not want to admit that it was a deal. After a long time, Qian Mo shook her head. Whether it was against her heart or a deal, since she had already chosen to do this, she might as well go crazy. Soon, panting sounds could be heard from the ice mountain. About 4 hours later, a powerful force suddenly rushed into the sky from the ice mountain. At this moment, Qian Mo had already put on her clothes. Powerful auras continuously spread out from her body and the surrounding ice mountain started to melt. Bloodline breakthrough. After borrowing Yi Xian's bloodline power, her mortal bloodline had broken through its shackles. Now she was no longer restricted by her bloodline. Not only that, she had also used this bloodline breakthrough to reach the upper self-release realm. She was a top expert of this world. Qian Mo closed her eyes and clenched her fists. At this moment, her body was filled with endless power. Upper self-release realm. If she met that old monk now, she would not fear him at all. Ordinary self-release realm experts would not be her match. Fifth dimension Tendo. At this moment, she thought of the fifth dimension Tendo. However, when she thought of that woman, a sense of helplessness rose from the depths of her heart. Even if she reached the upper realm of self-release, she still did not have the confidence to challenge Moon Yen. That woman was so powerful that it made people despair. Qian Mo looked into the distance. In the distant ice mountain, there were countless ice people. Most of them were her clansmen. They were all killed by Moon Yen. Back then she had brought her clansmen to this universe. Her thoughts at that time were very simple. She wanted to destroy Tendo and make her clan the ruler of this universe. Unfortunately, she had underestimated the strength of the fifth dimension Tendo. Too many experts from her family had died in that battle. After a long time, Qian Mo shook her head. She did not want to think about revenge. That woman didn't kill her even after she reached the self-release realm. There was only one explanation: she wasn't afraid of her. Qian Mo opened her palm and the World Prison Pagoda appeared in her hand. She had witnessed Xiao Ta's might in the previous battle. According to her guess, the Tao scripture was very likely in Xiaota's body. However, she did not have any other thoughts. She turned to look at the nearby Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian had already returned to normal, but he was still not awake. Qian Mo pointed with her finger and the World Prison Pagoda flew towards Yi Xian. Forcefully seized the World Prison Pagoda? She had never had such thoughts because she knew that even if the Tao scripture fell into her hands, she would not be able to keep it. It could be said that once she seized this Tao scripture, her enemies would not only be the Tao world and the ancient temple, but also Yi Xian's side. This Tao scripture was very tempting, but ordinary people would die if they obtained it. Qian Mo walked in front of Yi Xian and squatted down, looking at Yi Xian. In fact, if she wanted to sever her ill-fated relationship with Yi Xian, it was very simple. She would just have to kill Yi Xian. She had this thought before. Qian Mo looked at Yi Xian for a long time before turning to leave. Regardless of whether it was an ill-fated relationship or not, she did not want to care so much. Right now she had more important things to do. In a short while Qian Mo left the fifth dimension. Inside the ice mountain. About an hour later Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. Yi Xian hurriedly sat up and looked around. Ice mountain? At this moment the sword beside him suddenly trembled. Soon Yi Xian knew everything. After a long silence Yi Xian said softly, "Did she leave?" After saying that, he looked up at the depths of the starry sky. Qian Mo should have returned to the Tao world. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian looked at himself. At this moment, his bloodline power had returned to normal. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly took out a mirror. In the mirror he looked at his hair and saw some white strands. When he saw this, Yi Xian's face sank. "Big sister, how many years of lifespan do I have left?" Big sister said, 10 years. If you activate the prison pagoda again you will die on the spot. 10 years of lifespan. Yi Xian was stunned. He played with the pagoda for a bit and almost played himself to death? Big sister suddenly said, "You must break through to the origin breaker realm as soon as possible. If you break through, your lifespan will increase. Only then will you be able to continue using the prison pagoda." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Big sister, this pagoda has already recognized me as its master, and all of you cooperated with me. Why is there such a huge backlash?" Big sister fell silent for a moment before she said, "I did not expect there to be such a huge backlash. It should be because of the gathering of Tao laws. After the gathering of Tao laws, the power of Tao laws produced isn't something you can endure right now. The power of Tao laws. Needless to say, these Tao laws were really strong. Big sister did not lie to him. With the gathering of Tao laws, he was invincible in the fifth dimension. Of course he had to get rid of that Moon Yen Yen. Not to mention, even with the prison pagoda, he wasn't confident in being able to trap that Moon Yen Yen. Perhaps even the prophet himself at his peak with this pagoda wouldn't be able to. Big sister suddenly said, "What do you intend to do with those 2 monks in the pagoda?" Yi Xian immediately returned to the pagoda. He went to the first floor. On the first floor those 2 monks were still imprisoned by Xiaota. With a single thought from him, those 2 monks would immediately die because their cultivations had been sealed by the prison pagoda. Yi Xian walked over to those 2 monks and sized them up. The 2 of them sat cross-legged on the ground with their palms pressed together and were silently chanting. Yi Xian looked at them for a long time before shaking his head and turning to leave. He didn't say anything, because he knew that he couldn't subdue those 2. These people weren't even afraid of death. However, he didn't kill them. They would definitely be useful in the future. These were 2 upper self-release realm experts. The ancient temple wouldn't ignore them. After Yi Xian left the prison pagoda, he looked at the sword in his hand. The sword spirit. Besides the power of his bloodline, there was another reason he could fight that old monk, and that was the sword spirit. The sword spirit was a perfect match for his bloodline. It was even better than the executing heaven sword. Unfortunately, the sword spirit didn't communicate with him. Without thinking too much about it, Yi Xian put the sword spirit away and vanished. Right now he still had a lot of things to do. The Tao world. Because of the disappearance of the Tao spirit, the spirit energy in various parts of the Tao world had dried up. However, the people of the Tao world didn't care about this problem. They only had eyes for the Tao scripture. The precious Tao scripture that had once descended into the Tao world. Just 1 page was enough to change one's destiny. The God Palace. Mo Dao and the others were standing in front of the Pope. The Immortal Pavilion's master, Jiang Yu, was there as well. The hall was very quiet. The Pope and Jiang Yu hadn't expected that they would fail this time. Moreover, they had failed while working together with the ancient temple. Meanwhile, Jiang Yu suddenly said, It looks like things aren't as simple as we thought. The Pope was expressionless. I just don't know if the Tao scripture is in Yi Xian's hands. Li Mian said solemnly, Pope, I think that even if the Tao scripture isn't in Yi Xian's hands, we still can't let him live. He's related to Yi Qingji, and coupled with his terrifying talent, I'm afraid no one in the Tao world will be able to keep him in check in time. Jiang Yu nodded. Indeed. Although the Tao scripture is important, we have to be on guard against this person. He has such combat strength at such a young age. If he reaches self-release, then not to mention others, even you and I won't be able to do anything to him. Moreover, even if he doesn't have the Tao scripture, he should have read it. Since that's the case, why don't we just target him? The Pope fell silent. Jiang Yu continued, even if Di Linyuan obtains the Tao scripture, it's impossible for him to break through in a short period of time. So long as we obtain the Tao scripture from Yi Xian, then we'll have a very good chance of breaking through before Di Linyuan. Li Mian nodded. Pavilion Master Jiang is right. Killing Yi Xian won't just allow us to obtain the Tao scripture, we'll be able to eliminate a calamity. As for Di Linyuan, even if he obtains the Tao scripture, he'll definitely be heavily injured and won't be able to break through in a short period of time. Meanwhile, Mo Dao suddenly said, what if the woman in a plain dress is still alive? The woman in a plain dress. Everyone here fell silent when they heard this. All of them felt that Di Linyuan was still alive. Because they felt that the woman in a plain dress had definitely been heavily injured while fighting a 6th self-release realm expert. However, they'd overlooked something, and it was that the woman in a plain dress had killed 6 self-release realm experts. So, it was very likely that the woman in a plain dress was still alive. Jiang Yu suddenly said, if she's still alive and has a close relationship with Yi Xian, then she'll definitely appear as well if we act against Yi Xian. We'll be able to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. As he spoke, he gazed at the cult master. The cult master fell silent for a moment before he said, Brother Jiang is right. Then let's deal with Yi Xian with all our strength. Brother Jiang, join forces with those self-release realm experts of the Tao world. I'll personally head to the Tao world and contact the ancient temple. Let's see what their attitude is. Jiang Yu nodded. All right. As soon as he finished speaking, he stood up and left. The cult master turned around and vanished as well. Li Mian and Jiang Yu exchanged glances, and then Li Mian spoke solemnly, I hope we'll be able to kill Yi Xian this time. And Mo Dao nodded. Since the sect master and pavilion master have taken him seriously, then Yi Xian will definitely die. The cult master and Jiang Yu's intentions were very clear. They intended to gather the strength of the entire Tao world and the ancient temple to deal with Yi Xian. P.S. Asking for votes. I haven't asked for votes in a very long time. Chapter 1233. In the 5th dimension. After Yi Xian returned to the Wu clan, he immediately went into seclusion. His gains from the previous battle were not small. Especially the battle with the old monk. The old monk was at the upper self-release realm. Being able to fight with such an expert was an opportunity for him. An opportunity to break through. While Yi Xian was in seclusion, Guanyin came to the sword sect. At this time, the sword sect had 126 people. Among them, the weakest was at the origin returning realm. The sword sect also had 8 people at the half-step self-release realm. Although it was few, the battle strength of these 8 people could definitely reach the self-release realm. Because the previous battle made Guanyin realize that ordinary self-release realm experts were not that scary. Some of the top monsters in the 5th dimension could fight against self-release realm experts. And the swordsmen of the sword sect were all monsters. Guanyin found Senior Sister Lu and the 2 of them strolled in a xiaodao in the forest. Senior Sister Lu said, the next time they come, they should be stronger and have more people. Guanyin nodded, yes. Senior Sister Lu looked at Guanyin, when can we go out to battle? Guanyin was silent for a moment, then said, the 6th dimension and the Tao world know very little about the sword sect. This is our chance. The sword sect doesn't make a move, but once they do, we will decide the outcome. Senior Sister Lu said softly, yes. Guanyin said, if the sword sect needs anything you can tell me. Senior Sister Lu said, I want Lady Ajio to come to the sword sect. Ajio. Guanyin nodded, I will talk to Lady Ajio. In terms of sword Tao attainments, Ajio was undoubtedly the highest in the 5th dimension. If Ajio came to the sword sect to give pointers, it would definitely be of great benefit to the swordsmen of the sword sect. Senior Sister Lu suddenly said, we are very passive now because we know very little about the ancient temple and the Tao world. Guanyin nodded. I know. Senior Sister Lu said, "Is there a way to solve it?" Guanyin shook his head. "Even the Union Hall doesn't know much about the ancient temple. As for the Tao world, we have no way of contacting it." At this point she frowned. "Something's wrong." Senior Sister Lu said, "Xiao Dao." Guanyin turned around and left. She had to contact Xiao Dao. After a moment of silence, Senior Sister Lu walked into the distance. Before long she arrived in front of a statue. It was the statue of the founder of the Sword Sect. Looking at the statue of the green-robed man, Senior Sister Lu said softly, "After so many years, there's actually no news of you. You're too cruel." A moment later, Senior Sister Lu turned around and left. The Dao world, a demonic path family clan. In a room, Xiao Dao rolled up a letter and handed it to Emo Zhong in front of him. "Go to 5th dimension and give this to Yi Xian." The Emo Zhong put the letter away and said, "This is?" Xiao Dao said softly, "They know too little about the Dao world. This is the information I've collected about the Dao world. With this information they will have a rough idea of the Dao world's strength." Emo Zhong nodded, "Understood." With that he turned and left. In the room Xiao Dao kept quiet for a long time before he said softly, "Don't die. Or else, who am I going to return this favor to?" The monarch race. Di Ming was now the clan master of the monarch race. As for Di Linyuan, the monarch race could only treat him as dead. Di Ming sitting in the palace, in front of him was a self-release expert from the monarch race, Di Lian. He was the one sent by Di Ming to 5th dimension to observe Yi Xian. After a long time of silence, Di Ming said softly, "5th dimension 1. One had to admit that Di Ming was shocked. The Dao world sent down 6 self-release realm experts. Moreover, the ancient temple also sent out so many self-release realm experts, but they were defeated. Yi Xian had killed 2 upper self-release realm powerhouses by himself. Though he did it with the help of external forces, it was still terrifying. Most importantly, in the 5th dimension Yi Xian wasn't the only one who could fight self-release experts alone, there were many others who could. There were so many monsters in the 5th dimension. At this moment Di Lian suddenly said, "The overall strength of the 5th dimension is not as weak as we thought. Of course, the ancient temple's strength is also beyond our expectations." Ancient temple. Di Ming nodded. This ancient temple was able to send 3 upper-level self-release experts. This strength was no weaker than the Dao world's top forces. Di Ming suddenly asked, "What is the attitude of the 6th dimension?" Di Lian said solemnly, "The 6th dimension is helping Yi Xian. But when the Dao world and ancient temple joined hands against the 5th dimension, the 6th dimension did not send anyone to help." Di Ming nodded, "I understand. The 6th dimension is providing Yi Xian with soft help. Seems like the 6th dimension's Union Palace has discovered something, that's why they are helping Yi Xian." Di Lian said, "Yes, in terms of strength, the 5th dimension has no advantage, but the 6th dimension's Union Palace still chose to help. The reason is simple, they believe in Yi Xian." Di Lian looked at Di Ming, "Clan Master, the Pope, Celestial Pavilion and Ancient Temple will not let this go easily. If we help Yi Xian we will definitely offend them. But now, it's not a good time for us to be dragged into this mess." Di Ming shook, "No, I'm the opposite of what you think. I think this might be an opportunity for us." Di Lian frowned, "Opportunity?" Di Ming nodded, "Have you ever thought about what will happen to us if the Pope and Jiang Yu really get the scripture? By then, a single word from them will make us kneel before them, we won't even have a chance to resist." Di Lian remained silent. For now, the Bloodshed God Palace and Celestial Pavilion wouldn't dare to annihilate the monarch races because they still had the ability to resist. If they were to do so, even if the monarch races were annihilated, they would still be able to take a bite out of them. However, if the Pope and Jiang Yu obtained the scripture, once they broke through, the monarch races would have no choice but to submit to them. Di Lian said, "The risk is too great." Di Ming nodded, "Too great. If the monarch races were to help Yi Xian, they might face the wrath of the Bloodshed God Palace and Celestial Pavilion. But now, because of the scripture, many factions in the Dao world had gathered around these 2 factions. Though they weren't as strong as the monarch races, they were still a force to be reckoned with. In other words, the monarch races were no match for the Bloodshed God Palace and Celestial Pavilion. Di Ming was silent for a moment. He said, "We can help them in the dark." Di Lian frowned, "Help them in the dark?" Di Ming said softly, "Give them money, cultivation resources and divine items." As he spoke, he looked at Di Lian, "Get ready, take out some of the divine items and cultivation resources from the treasury, then have someone who isn't from the monarch races send them to the fifth dimension. Di Lian asked, family, is this worth it? Di Ming nodded, if we can befriend Yi Xian it will be worth it. If Yi Xian fails we will only lose some worldly possessions. So it's worth it? Di Lian hesitated. If the Bloodshed God Palace and Celestial Pavilion find out, Di Ming sneered coldly, do you think that if we don't help Yi Xian the Bloodshed God Palace and Celestial Pavilion will let us go? They won't. We and the demonic clans are just meat in their eyes. Once they are free they will devour us. Because of the scripture they have gathered some factions around them. Hence we are no match for them. Di Lian nodded, understood. As he finished he left silently. Moments later, Di Lian left with some of the monarch race's wealth and cultivation resources. In front of the palace, Di Ming slowly closed his eyes. There was another reason why he chose Yi Xian. Compared to the Bloodshed God Palace and Celestial Pavilion, he hoped that Yi Xian could seize the opportunity to rise. That way Yi Xian would break the balance of power in the Tao world. That way the Tao world would be balanced and the monarch races would have a chance. Of course there was another reason. According to the investigation Yi Xian was a loyal swordsman. A person like him was more trustworthy than the Bloodshed God Palace and Celestial Pavilion. What Di Ming didn't notice was that not far away from him, just a few feet away from him, was a lady standing there. It was the fifth dimension Tendo Munyanyan. Munyanyan remained silent for a long time before she turned and left. She left just like that, but the monarch didn't notice her at all. Was strange. As Munyanyan walked out of the palace, her lips curved into a smile. At this moment she suddenly thought of a human saying, a just cause enjoys abundant support, an unjust cause finds little. Though Yi Xian wasn't as cruel and ruthless as the other monarchs, it was because of his benevolence that he gained the recognition and help of many. Many times, benevolence and justice were still very useful. Because no one would want to be friends with a monarch. At this moment Munyanyan stopped abruptly. She placed her right hand on her chest and frowned. A voice sounded beside her, what's wrong? Munyanyan shook her head and continued walking. The voice said, is there something wrong with your body? No. Munyanyan smiled. You still want to lie to me? The voice said in a deep voice. Munyanyan giggled, don't worry, I'm really fine. The voice said, you're lying. Let's not talk about this. Munyanyan shrugged. I still have some matters to deal with. Otherwise that little guy will have a hard time living. The voice said angrily, why did you interfere with his matters? Is it because you interfered with his matters that your body has problems? After a moment of silence, Munyanyan shook her head. There's something wrong with my body in the first place. However, I've underestimated his karma. I can resist the prophet, but some karma, it's a bit like the cause of disaster. As she said that, she looked up into the depths of the starry sky and frowned. Who was it that used such a vicious karma technique on him? The other party's attainments in karma are countless times better than the prophet's. The voice said, then don't interfere with his matters. It's too late. Munyanyan smiled. The voice was a bit anxious. Is it too late to give up now? It's indeed too late. Munyanyan said softly. As she said that, she lowered her head and looked down. I suddenly feel a bit sorry for him. Although he has the plain-dressed woman to protect him, this road isn't easy to walk on. As she said that, she walked into the distance. And around her, some red threads invisible to the naked eye appeared. Chapter 1234. In the five-dimensional universe. After 3 days of seclusion, Yi Xian left his room. Outside the door, Yi Xian looked up at the horizon with his hands spread wide. His blood was flowing quickly inside his body, and he felt extremely comfortable. It had to be said that fighting was the best way for a person to grow. The battle with the old monk had given him a lot of benefits. However, he also knew that if it was a normal fight, he was far from being the old monk's opponent. Realm. This was his biggest problem right now. If he reached the self-release realm, he would be able to fight with the old monk even without external objects. If he used the prison pagoda, he would be able to kill an expert of the old monk's level. However, the backlash of the prison pagoda was a big problem, so he didn't dare to casually use it. The backlash of the 9 Dao laws was too terrifying. At this time, Guanyin suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian and said, the Dao world Xiao Dao sent us a message. Yi Xian looked at Guanyin. What did she say? Guanyin said in a deep voice, the Dao world is much stronger than we imagined. Moreover, they seem to have reached an agreement to deal with us. Yi Xian said softly, The Tao world, the ancient temple. Guanyin nodded. Yes. They will join hands. Yixin smiled. How is the formation? Guanyin said, Old Li and the others are still being modified. This time, if the enemy invades, we will let all the experts of the fifth dimension attack together so that you can gather their strength. However, this is very dangerous. Yixin was silent. The previous formation didn't borrow the strength of all the experts of the fifth dimension because they were afraid that he wouldn't be able to bear that kind of power. However, they discovered that if they didn't borrow the strength of the fifth dimension, the formation's power was very limited. Yixin was silent as he recalled the power of the formation. At that time, his body could bear the power of the formation, but there was pressure. In other words, if the formation added the strength of the fifth dimension, he might not be able to bear it. Yixin suddenly said, I'm fine. Guanyin looked at Yixin. This isn't a joke. Yixin smiled and said, I know. Let Old Li and the others do as they please. Also, make arrangements because they might come again soon, and this time the people who come will be stronger than we imagined. Guanyin nodded. Understood. With that, she turned around and left. Yixin looked up at the sky. Above the starry sky there were enemies everywhere. When would it end? Yixin was at a loss. The current him was no longer the Qingqing crown prince of the past. He could see things further. His intuition told him that the matter with Yixin would probably never end. At this moment Yixin suddenly turned around. Who's there? As soon as he finished speaking, the sword in his hand suddenly trembled, and he was about to leave its sheath. Meanwhile, a black-clothed man walked out. Self-release realm. He wasn't from the fifth dimension. The black-clothed man cupped his fists at Yixin. Young Master Yi, I am Di Lian of the Tao World's Emperor clan. Originally he wanted to send someone else, but he might as well do it himself. At least he wouldn't betray the Emperor clan, but that might not be the case with someone else. Emperor clan? Yixin frowned slightly. What's the matter? He naturally knew about this Emperor clan Dao Yi. It was a superpower in the Tao world that was similar to the demon Dao family. Di Lian flicked his finger and a storage ring landed in front of Yixin. Yixin glanced at the storage ring, then looked at Di Lian. This is? Di Lian said, Young Master Yi, this is a token of our Emperor clan's appreciation. Young Master Yi, please accept it. Yixin looked at Di Lian. What do you want? Di Lian said, just to form a good relationship. Yixin fell silent for a moment before saying, all right. I'm willing to form a good relationship with your clan. After saying that, he put away the storage ring. Seeing Yixin put it away, Di Lian instantly felt relieved. If Yixin didn't accept it, then the Emperor clan could only choose to stand on the Pope's side. Di Lian collected his thoughts, then said, according to what I know, the Tao World Immortal Pavilion's Pavilion Master, Jiang Yu, has already contacted some forces in the Tao World, and the Pope has personally gone to the ancient temple in the sixth dimension. Young Master Yi, you must prepare as soon as possible. Yixin said, what forces are the Pope and the Immortal Pavilion's Pavilion Master? Di Lian said in a low voice, thousands of years ago the two of them had already reached the peak of self-release realm. Now they might be at the peak of self-release realm. Peak of self-release realm. Yixin fell silent. Di Lian said, it's very difficult for those who aren't at the self-release realm to descend here. Moreover, even if they use a secret technique to descend here, it'll still be greatly restricted. So, young Master Ye's opponents are at least at the self-release realm, and there might be quite a few of them. Yixin nodded. Thank you for telling me. I understand. Di Lian cupped his fists and left silently. It wasn't suitable for him to stay here any longer. After Di Lian left, Yixin remained silent for a short while before he said, Big sister, did the prophet leave any help behind? Big sister replied, no. Yixin hesitated for a moment before he said, isn't he the #1 genius of the Tao world? Isn't he the descendant of the former #1 expert of the Tao world, Yi Lanting? Is there any way to get Yi Lanting to help? Big sister said, you need to calm down. Yixin sighed softly. I can't calm down. Who the fuck can endure this? I can't even deal with an upper-level self-release realm expert. Now I've come to the extreme self-release realm and I can't even catch my breath. Really, big sister, get me an expert. I don't want to work hard anymore. It's too fucking difficult. Big sister was speechless. The 9th floor suddenly said, Kid, didn't you say you wanted to rely on yourself? What kind of person are you calling? Yixin said furiously, it's easy for you to say that. The 9th floor said, who said I wanted to rely on myself? Yixin said, I've changed my mind, alright? Fuck. The ninth floor said, "You're amazing." Unfortunately, the woman in a plain dress has left, the man in green clothes is nowhere to be found, and the fifth dimension Tendo has fled as well. Hee hee, you have no one to call. Yi Xian fell silent. The ninth floor said, "Actually, you can treat these hardships as a form of training. Isn't there an old saying? If a piece of iron doesn't go through endless tempering, how can it become a sharp sword? You're this piece of iron now." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Senior, haven't you noticed a problem? My enemies have always been abnormal. They've always been several realms higher than me. Look, I haven't even left the fifth dimension, but I have enemies in the sixth dimension and in the Tao realm, and they're the most powerful kind. I dare to bet that before long, I'll definitely have enemies stronger than the Tao realm and the ancient temple." The ninth floor, Yi Xian said again, "Some enemies I'll admit. But some enemies I really can't understand." The ninth floor said, "You've received benefits from the Prophet. You can hand over the study house." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Senior, do you really think it's over if I hand over the study house?" "No, even if I hand over the study house, those people won't let me go. I'm very clear about the hearts of these powerful forces. To cut the grass you have to remove the roots. Not to mention the Tao realm, even in Qingqing those families know how to do this." The ninth floor was silent. As Yi Xian had said, even if Yi Xian handed over the Tao scripture, those people in the Tao realm wouldn't let him go. To remove the roots. How could the people in the Tao realm let a demon like Yi Xian grow up? Moreover, both sides were already at odds with each other. Yi Xian continued saying, "Karma, karma, karma. It's said that there's a cause before there's an effect. But senior, have you noticed that many of my causes aren't caused by myself? On the contrary, I've been reaping the effects of others. I'm not complaining, I'm just a little tired." The ninth floor said, "Kid, I'll give you a suggestion. Perhaps you can talk to the fifth dimension Tendo." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Fifth dimension Tendo?" The ninth floor said, "Yes. To be honest, kid, after you open the study house, I'll take a look at the Tao scripture and leave. Really, because I realized that following you might not end well for me." Yi Xian was speechless. "After being with you for so long, I've come to realize that you're toxic. It's just as you said, you have an endless supply of enemies. Some of them are known, but there are also many that are unknown. Now that I'm with you, I'm starting to get a little nervous. Let's not talk about anything else, but I feel that something isn't normal. The fifth dimension tribulation only appears once every million years, and you just happen to encounter it. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but gradually, I realized that it might not be a coincidence." Yi Xian's expression was gloomy. "Don't tell me that someone deliberately made me be born at this time and let me encounter the fifth dimension tribulation." The ninth floor said, "I think that's the case." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Damn, I'm also a little panicked." The ninth floor continued, "You said that your enemies are abnormal, and I agree with that. In your previous life you could say that you were a prophet, and your current enemies are actually the prophet's enemies. Of course this is unfair to you. The prophet schemed against you even though he failed. But you inherited his karma. Do you know what I think? The prophet's karma can be seen, and it is what you are experiencing right now. But this isn't the most frightening thing. The most frightening thing is the invisible karma on your body." Yi Xian was silent. The ninth floor said, "I roughly know who your father is, but your mother is definitely a big problem. For someone like you, your mother can't be an ordinary person. Moreover, didn't you notice a problem? Your mother, Dugu Xian, disappeared after saying that she was looking for someone. I know that you secretly sent people to look for her, but there was no news, right?" Yi Xian nodded. Dugu Xian. In fact, he had been looking for a long time, but there was no news at all. This was very strange. The ninth floor said, "Actually, if the prophet knew that you were so complicated, he wouldn't have chosen you even if you beat him to death. That's not right, you can help him complete some things that he couldn't do himself. No matter what, he is gone. When the time comes, you can find the fifth dimension Tendo and talk to her. She can see further than I can. Perhaps she knows something about Tao Yi that you want to know." Yi Xian was silent. The ninth floor said, "Now that I am following you, I really feel that it is very dangerous. Especially after the woman in the plain dress left, this feeling became even stronger. P.S. Recently I want to watch some relatively pure movies. Everyone recommends some pure ones. I'm serious, brothers." Chapter 1235. Yi Xian was silent. He remembered that the Tendo of the fifth dimension had said that the plain-dressed woman was suppressing something. Now that she had left, There was no one to suppress it anymore. Karma. The only thing he could think of was karma. Yi Xian looked at himself. Unfortunately, he could not see the so-called karma. No. Yi Xian suddenly frowned. Why not try it? He closed his eyes slowly. At the same time, the sword domain appeared around him. Yi Xian started to observe his surroundings. Soon he found some faintly discernible threads in the sword domain. At this moment, the ninth floor suddenly said, "This is your karma thread." Yi Xian said, "Can I cut it off?" The ninth floor said, "Try it." Yi Xian suddenly slashed with his sword. Sword cognition. As the sword slashed, a sword ray flashed in the sword domain. However, the karma thread was not affected at all. Yi Xian frowned slightly. The karma thread was not affected by him picking it up. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Senior, what is going on?" The ninth floor said, "You are too weak." Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. The ninth floor said, "Not being affected by all karma. Perhaps only the strength of the sword master at the top of the pagoda can do it." The strength of the sword master at the top of the pagoda. Yi Xian shook his head. "I don't care." After saying that, he looked up at the sky and said softly, "I should think about how to survive first." He knew that the Tao world and the ancient temple would once again descend into the fifth dimension. And this time, if he couldn't withstand it, then all karma and karma would be for naught. Yi Xian disappeared on the spot. This time he did not intend to sit still and wait for death. He wanted to take the initiative to attack. Yi Xian arrived in front of the fifth dimension barrier. On the other side of the barrier was Wenjiarhua. Wenjiarhua said, "Young Master Yi, someone from the Tao world is contacting the ancient temple." Yi Xian nodded. "I know." Wenjiarhua said, "Young Master Yi, be careful. If you need anything, just inform Li Qinfeng." Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Miss Wen, is the Tao world the limit of our universe?" Wenjiarhua shook his head. "No." Yi Xian asked, "In other words, there is a more powerful world above the Tao world?" Wenjiarhua was silent. Yi Xian smiled and said, "You don't know or you can't say?" Wenjiarhua looked at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, I think what you need to do now is to deal with the Tao world and the ancient temple. As for other matters, put them aside for the time being. Also, young Master Yi, better not leave the fifth dimension. If you appear in the sixth dimension, the ancient temple can easily take you down. As for the Tao world, don't even think about going up. Once you go up, you might never come back down." With that, she turned around and left. In fact, she was not optimistic about Yi Xian at the moment. Not only was Yi Xian targeted by the Tao world, but he was also targeted by the ancient temple. Previously, Yi Xian could win because the Tao world and the ancient temple did not attach enough importance to him. However, it was different now. The Tao world and the ancient temple attached great importance to Yi Xian. He was someone who possessed the Tao scripture. In fact, if it were not for the plain-dressed woman, the sixth dimension might have joined the ancient temple. No one could resist the temptation of the Tao scripture. At that moment, a white-robed monk suddenly appeared not far behind Yi Xian. Yi Xian turned to look at the white-robed monk. "From the ancient temple?" The white-robed monk nodded slightly. "This old monk is the ancient temple's governor elder. Greetings, young Master Yi." Yi Xian smiled and said, "You want to capture me?" The white-robed monk shook his head. "Although my strength surpasses young Master Yi, I can't capture young Master Yi." Yi Xian had Xiao Ta, so even a self-release realm expert could not do anything to him. At the very least, it was not a problem for him to protect himself. The governor elder asked again, "Young Master Yi, the two monks of my ancient temple are still in your hands, right?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." The governor elder pressed his palms together. "Thank you, young Master Yi, for not killing them. Since young Master Yi did not kill them, this old monk thinks that we can talk." Yi Xian smiled. "As far as I know, the Tao world's pope went to your ancient temple." The governor elder smiled. "It doesn't matter. They can talk about their matters and we will talk about ours." Yi Xian glanced at the old monk. "Can we do that?" The governor elder nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian's lips curled up slightly. "Then let's talk." The governor elder pressed his palms together. "Young Master Yi, our ancient temple wants that study room. This is our goal. Moreover, the prophet once promised us that he would give us that study room. Thus, we helped him enter reincarnation and escape the Tao world's pursuit. However, he went back on his words. He never returned." Yi Xian was silent. Perhaps it was not that the prophet went back on his words, but that the prophet could not return. The governor elder continued, "Later we found out that the prophet was erased. As for the study room, it fell into the hands of young Master Yi. Yi Xian suddenly said, I don't understand. Why did you wait until now to snatch the study room? Why didn't you come then? The governor elder shook his head. Young Master Yi, we did not know who the prophet chose. Moreover, he was very smart. He left the study room in the fifth dimension, but he did not leave the key there. Of course, no one knew that the study room was the Tao scripture. We did not know either. In our opinion, the prophet must have carried the Tao scripture with him. After all, it was too precious. Thus, all these years we have been searching for the prophet's reincarnation, wanting to know who he chose. However, someone is obstructing us. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. If I'm not wrong, it should be the person behind young Master Yi who is obstructing us. Otherwise, we would have gone to look for young Master Yi. Yi Xian was silent. Needless to say, it must be the plain-dressed woman. The governor elder continued, when the prophet left the ancient temple, he not only took his Tao scripture with him, but also a Buddhist scripture from our ancient temple. Whether it's the Buddhist scripture or the Tao scripture, both are very important to our ancient temple. Yi Xian smiled. Master, you know that I'm not the prophet. The governor elder was silent. Obviously, Yi Xian did not want to admit it. However, this was normal. Yi Xian was indeed not the prophet, so why would he admit to the prophet's debt? The governor elder sighed softly. Yi Xian suddenly said, Master, I have an idea. Do you want to hear it? The governor elder looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, let's hear it. Yi Xian nodded. Governor elder, before I say it, I would like to ask you a question. Between the Tao world and me, if you had to choose an opponent, who would you choose? The governor elder looked at Yi Xian. I choose the Tao world. He had chosen the Tao world as his opponent. In fact, the ancient temple did not want to target Yi Xian. The ancient temple was also very afraid of the plain-dressed woman's strength. The ancient temple knew what the plain-dressed woman had done in the sixth dimension, and they also knew that it was the plain-dressed woman who had stopped them from investigating Yi Xian. Moreover, they felt other karma from Yi Xian, which was not the prophet's karma. To put it simply, Yi Xian was not an ordinary person but a very complicated person. They did not want to get involved in Yi Xian's karma whirlpool. However, they could not refuse the Tao scriptures and Buddhist scriptures. Upon hearing the governor elder's words, Yi Xian smiled. How about this? Let's cooperate. The governor elder looked at Yi Xian. Cooperate? Yi Xian nodded. He opened his palm, and the book house appeared in his hand. Then he used the prison pagoda to open the book house. Soon a voice came from inside. The host's strength is not enough. It cannot be opened. Yi Xian looked at the governor elder, who said softly, He set a restriction. Yi Xian nodded. Can your excellency open it by force? The governor elder looked at the book house and shook his head. I don't dare. Since it was left behind by the prophet, he should have thought of all possibilities. If I force it open, I'm afraid it will not end well. Yi Xian said, I can't open it now. The governor elder said softly, So, that plain-dressed woman did not open the Tao scriptures? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. The governor elder frowned. Then why is she so strong? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know. The governor elder's eyes flashed with doubt. You don't know young Master Yi? Yi Xian smiled. I really don't know. Governor elder, let's talk business. The governor elder said in a deep voice, Young Master Yi, tell us what you think. Yi Xian said, How about this? When I can open this book house, I will return the Buddhist scriptures to the ancient temple. As for the Tao scriptures, I can also make a copy and give it to you. The governor elder blinked. You're that good? Yi Xian said with a smile, Of course I have a condition. First, you have to help me deal with the Tao world. Second, you have to help me and my friends improve their strength. The governor elder frowned. Young Master Yi, your condition? Yi Xian looked at the governor elder. The Tao scriptures. The Tao scriptures. The governor elder said with a smile, Young Master Yi, we can also join forces with the Tao world. What do you think? Yi Xian nodded. You can indeed do that. However, after you join forces with the Tao world, you will still have to fight the Tao world. After all, the Tao world will never give the Tao scriptures to the ancient temple, and the ancient temple will never give them the Tao scriptures. Or do you want to share the Tao scriptures? The governor elder asked. Can't I? Yi Xian said with a smile, I'm willing to share it with you because I haven't reached the self-release realm yet, which is still far from me. However, if the experts of the Tao world get the Tao scriptures and break through first, do you think they will share it with you? Or are you confident that you can get the Tao scriptures first? Of course it's possible. However, if I Yi Xian die, although I can't keep the Tao scriptures, I can choose who I give it to first. What do you think? The governor elder was silent. Yi Xian added, moreover, compared to the Tao world, my strength is much weaker. I can't pose any threat to the ancient temple. Even if I can, it will be in the future. At least in a short time I can't pose a fatal threat to you. Even if I read the Tao scriptures, I can't reach the self-release realm in an instant, right? However, the Tao world is different. They are all at the self-release realm. Once they read the Tao scriptures, he. The governor elder looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, I've changed my mind. Yi Xian frowned slightly. What do you mean? The governor elder said, I think that you are a greater threat than the Tao world. At least for now you make me a little afraid. Yi Xian was speechless. Damn it, did I fool you for nothing? Chapter 1236. Yi Xian was silent. He had thought that he had successfully fooled them, but he had not expected that they would be wary of him. He had gone overboard this time. In the distance, the old monk said softly, Young Master Yi is not only talented, but his schemes are also top-notch. To be honest, if young Master Yi reaches the self-release realm, I'm afraid our ancient temple will not be able to do anything to young Master Yi. Yi Xian smiled. So, Master, you will choose the Tao world, right? The governor elder shook his head. No, as young Master Yi said, if we choose the Tao world, we will eventually have to fight them. Yi Xian looked at the governor elder. So? The governor elder asked softly, Young Master Yi, if we choose you, will you regret it? Yi Xian said with a smile, You have investigated me, haven't you? The governor elder nodded. Yes. Yi Xian asked, Then do you trust me? The governor elder was silent. Yi Xian smiled and did not say anything else. After a long time, the governor elder put his palms together. Young Master Yi, we trust you. Yi Xian looked at the governor elder. Then we can talk about how to destroy those experts from the Tao world. The governor elder said, Young Master Yi, this matter is of great importance. We cannot be careless. He paused and added, Since we have already cooperated, shouldn't young Master Yi return the people from our ancient temple? Yi Xian smiled and said, Of course I have to return it. However, Lil Pagoda is still in a coma because of the backlash. Therefore, I can only wait for it to wake up before I can use its power to break the seal. The governor elder looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Master, everything I said is true. If you don't believe me, I can swear to heaven. The governor elder shook his head. That won't be necessary. Young Master Yi, I need to go back to the ancient temple. Please wait for my news, young Master Yi. With that, he turned around and disappeared. After the governor elder left, the voice from the 9th floor suddenly rang out. You don't believe him. Yi Xian smiled. What do you think? He doesn't trust you very much either. Yi Xian shook his head. If this Tao scripture could really reach above soul release realm, none of them would believe it. Of course, they would definitely be more afraid of me in the Tao world. If the Tao world obtains the Tao scripture, they might immediately break through to above soul release realm. At that time they would have no hope of snatching it. But I am different. Even if I open the book room and obtain the Tao scriptures, it is impossible for me to instantly break through above self-release realm. The 9th house said, So, they will definitely choose you. Yi Xian shook his head again. They won't choose me either. As I said before, they don't believe in the Tao world, but they won't believe in me either. So, if I'm not wrong, they will let us in the Tao world kill each other while they sit back and reap the benefits. This is the most beneficial choice for them. The 9th house said softly, Just now, you showed them the book room to tell them that you still can't open it. The ancient temple doesn't have the confidence to force it open, so before they find a solution, it is useless for them to obtain the book room. Not only that, but they will also become the target of the Tao world in the 6th dimension. Yi Xian smiled. Senior is very smart. The 9th house sneered. If I can see through your goal, can't that old monk see through it? Yi Xian shrugged. So what if he sees through it? The 9th house said, What are your plans? Yi Xian said softly, The 6th dimension and the Tao world's imperial clans aren't helping because my strength and the 5th dimension strength aren't enough. If my strength and the 5th dimension strength reach a certain level, they will help. Now I need to do 2 things. First, become stronger. Not only do I need to become stronger, but the 5th dimension also needs to become stronger. Second, find allies. I have the Tao scripture. As long as I have enough strength, many people will be willing to be my ally. The 9th house was silent. As Yi Xian had said, as long as Yi Xian wasn't weak and because of the Tao scripture, many people would be willing to be his ally. Wasn't it the same for him? Yi Xian turned and left. Soon Yi Xian arrived at the Fifth Dimension's Alliance Palace. There was only Guan Yin inside. Yi Xian handed Guan Yin a slip of paper. Guan Yin looked at it and said softly, "Painter Wei Yang Tian Jian Zizai." Yi Xian nodded. "Help me find them." Guan Yin looked at Yi Xian. "Are they from the fourth dimension?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." Guan Yin wanted to say something but hesitated. Smiling, Yi Xian said, "They are all my friends." Guan Yin nodded. "I understand." After saying that, she turned and left. Yi Xian walked to the entrance of the palace and looked outside. He naturally hadn't forgotten about Painter Wei Yang Tian and Jian Zizai. Although the three women were still very weak when they parted, of course, that was only in terms of their current level. However, the three women were all stronger than Yi Xian at that time. He didn't believe that the three women would remain stagnant. However, he was a bit puzzled. Why hadn't he heard any news about the three women along the way? They couldn't have gone to the Tao world, right? In the fourth dimension, Life Forbidden Zone. This was one of the three great forbidden zones of the fourth dimension. Very few people set foot here. In the depths of the Life Forbidden Zone, a woman was sitting cross-legged on the ground on top of a mountain. The woman wore a white dress and had long hair that draped over her shoulders. There was a heroic spirit between her eyebrows. If Yi Xian was here, he would be pleasantly surprised because the woman in front of him was Jian Zizai. At this time, a phantom suddenly appeared not far in front of Jian Zizai. The phantom was like a shadow, and its true face couldn't be seen clearly. At this time, Jian Zizai opened his eyes and looked at the phantom. Restriction Master. The phantom in front of him was the Restriction Master of the Life Forbidden Zone. The Restriction Master nodded slightly. "How do you feel now?" Jian Zizai said, "Breakthrough is imminent." The Restriction Master nodded. "Then break through in peace. After breaking through, you can leave this place." Jian Zizai frowned slightly. "What's wrong?" The Restriction Master said, "He is looking for you." Jian Zizai said, "What about little brother?" Almost everyone she knew was dead, except for Yi Xian. Therefore the first person she thought of was Yi Xian. The Restriction Master, Jian Zizai said in a deep voice, "Did he cause trouble again?" The Restriction Master nodded. "His situation isn't particularly good. You can choose to go or not go. It's up to you." Jian Zizai looked at the Restriction Master. "Back then you let me in because of him, right?" The Restriction Master nodded. "Yes." Jian Zizai frowned slightly. "You know him?" The Restriction Master said softly, "I don't know him, but I know his father." "Yi Xian's father." Jian Zizai blinked. "Who is his father?" After a moment of silence, the Restriction Master said, "A very strong person." Jian Zizai asked again, "Have you fought before?" The Restriction Master nodded. Jian Zizai glanced at the Restriction Master. Needless to say, this person had definitely lost, because she could already feel that the other's emotions were a bit off. The Restriction Master said softly, "I lost that battle. He didn't kill me. Not only did he not kill me, but he also helped me a lot. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been able to break through to self-release back then." As he said that, he paused and said, "A true self-release. A true self-release. Without transcending the great Tao, how could it be called self-release?" Jian Zizai suddenly asked, "Why didn't you leave? With your strength, you should have been able to leave long ago, right?" The Restriction Master shook his head. "He asked me to help protect someone here." Jian Zizai was a bit curious. "Protect someone?" The Restriction Master nodded. "Thinking about it, it's almost time." After a moment of silence, Jian Zizai asked, "Is he in danger now?" The Restriction Master nodded. "His situation isn't particularly good. He has too much karma on him. It's a very troublesome matter. If you are willing to help, you can go after breaking through. If not, I won't force you. When the time comes, I'll personally go. After all, he's the son of an old friend. I have to take care of him." Jian Zizai said, "I'll go." As she said that, the corners of her mouth raised slightly. "He's my little brother." The Restriction Master nodded and turned to leave. Jian Zizai slowly closed his eyes and peacefully broke through. Ancient Temple. When the Governor Elder returned to the Ancient Temple, the Pope was strolling with the Ancient Temple's abbot on a Shao Dao at the foot of the Divine Mountain. The Pope was still unable to enter the Ancient Temple. On the Shao Dao the two walked slowly. When he saw the Governor Elder, the Pope put his palms together and said, "Abbot, I'll take my leave first." The Ancient Temple's abbot bowed slightly. "Take care, Pope." The Pope nodded and turned to disappear at the end of the horizon. The abbot uttered the name of Buddha and then looked at the governor elder. The governor elder told him what he had discussed with Yi Xian. After a moment the governor elder said, "Abbot, what do you think?" The abbot said softly, "Young master, yes, threat is above the Tao realm." Above the Tao realm. Hearing this, the governor elder fell silent. The ancient temple's abbot slowly walked into the distance. Young master Yi is a genius. He reached this level without reading the Tao scripture. His achievements are no less than Yi Qingji's. Moreover, he has a Tao protector. Although he has left, he still can't be underestimated. As for what he said about sharing the Tao scripture, he might be telling the truth. However, he's still a threat to our ancient temple. The governor elder asked, "Why?" The ancient temple's abbot said softly, "If he reaches the self-release realm, what do you think will happen?" The governor elder fell silent. If Yi Xian reached the self-release realm, no one in the self-release realm would be his match. The governor elder said solemnly, "Then should we join forces with the Tao realm?" The ancient temple's abbot shook his head. "If we join forces with the Tao realm, both sides will eventually fight. We can join forces with the Tao realm in the open and Yi Xian in the dark. We can let them exhaust each other." The governor elder shook his head. The Tao realm and Yi Xian are not stupid. The ancient temple's abbot smiled kindly. "Whoever is anxious will lose. Our ancient temple is not anxious, and neither is young master Yi. However, the Tao realm is anxious. Do you understand?" The governor elder nodded. "I understand." At this moment, a monk suddenly appeared in front of the ancient temple's abbot. The monk bowed slightly and said, "I found out the origin of that plain-dressed woman. P.S. Please vote. To be human, one must have a dream." Chapter 1237. The Plain-Dressed Woman. In fact, the ancient temple was most afraid of one person, and that was Yi Xian's Tao protector, the plain-dressed woman. The ancient temple was very afraid of this mysterious plain-dressed woman. It was also because of this that the ancient temple did not dare to go all out against Yi Xian. That woman had almost destroyed the sixth dimension with a single slash. The ancient temple's abbot nodded. "Speak." The monk said solemnly, "This woman is not from the fifth dimension, nor is she from the fourth dimension. She might be from the third dimension." The third dimension. Hearing this, the ancient temple's abbot frowned, and the beads in his hand stopped spinning. The governor elder also frowned. The third dimension? The monk nodded. From various signs, she should be a person from the third dimension. However, the current third dimension is untraceable. The governor elder was confused. "What do you mean?" The monk said solemnly, "The third dimension seems to have disappeared into thin air. It should be hidden by someone. Moreover, when going to the third dimension," saying so, he paused before continuing, "it is very dangerous. There is a powerful sword chi guarding there, no one dares to approach." The governor elder said solemnly, "Even with your strength, you can't?" The monk nodded. "I can't. It is very dangerous." After thinking for a while, the governor elder looked at the ancient temple's abbot. The ancient temple's abbot said softly, "The third dimension, this is interesting." The governor elder said solemnly, "Could that woman's strength have reached self-release or above?" The ancient temple's abbot smiled and said, "Anything is possible." The governor elder's expression sank. "If the other party has reached self-release or above," the ancient temple's abbot suddenly said, "No matter, since she did not help Yi Xian clear his opponents, there are only two possibilities. First, she is afraid of something, and second, she is being held back by something. If we can obtain the Tao scripture, along with our temple's Buddhist scriptures, our ancient temple can break through the limit and head to the realm of Pure Land." The realm of Pure Land. The entire ancient temple's goal. The governor elder and the monk clasped their hands together and chanted Buddhist names. The abbot of the ancient temple suddenly said, "Governor, please make arrangements for the ascetic monks who are cultivating outside to return. This matter should come to an end." After that, he walked up the mountain. The governor elder bowed slightly and left with the monk. Not long after, a bell rang above the ancient temple. In the five-dimensional universe. Inside the room, Yi Xian took out the bookstore. The bookstore was just a small room. From the outside, there was nothing special about it. At this moment, Big Sister appeared in the room. Big Sister looked at the study room and said softly, "Sir should have left it for himself, what a pity." She glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything else. Yi Xian said, "Eldest sister has been in contact with Sir for the longest time. Did he say anything before he disappeared?" After a moment of silence, eldest sister said, "I've said that we'll meet again if fate wills it." Fate brought us together again. Yi Xian was speechless. The big sister said softly, if possible, you can go to the Yi family in the Tao world to take a look. Yi Xian nodded. Sure. The big sister said again, although you are not Sir, you have inherited Sir's karma. I mean, there are good and bad things. Sir's origin is not simple, especially the Yi family's ancestor. Yi Xian shook his head. If I am not Yi Qingyu, the Yi family's ancestor will kill me? The big sister said, not necessarily, because most people don't know that you are not Sir. Yi Xian was silent. Indeed, it could be seen. There were really not many people who could break his karma. So far, only the fifth dimension Tendo could be seen with the naked eye. Yi Xian asked again, are there any descendants of the Yi family? The big sister nodded. Yes. When Sir broke through, he already felt that things were not good, so he let some of his family members leave quietly. However, he underestimated his ability because he broke through too quickly. He couldn't suppress it. Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. What a freak. The big sister looked at Yi Xian. One more thing, your current cultivation level is a very big disadvantage. You must reach half-step separation realm as soon as possible. If you can reach half-step separation realm, the backlash of regulations should be much, much lower. Yi Xian nodded. I know. As the big sister said, his biggest disadvantage now was his own cultivation level. His cultivation level was really too low. Shattering void tear. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground, his eyes slowly closed. Yi Xian took out an alchemical pill. This was the origin return pill that Guanyin had given him, used to break through to origin return breaking realm. However, he had not swallowed this alchemical pill before because he had just broken through to the shattering void tier not long ago. But now he did not have that much time to wait. Yi Xian directly swallowed the alchemical pill, and very soon, a pure energy spread out from his body. In an instant, a powerful aura overflowed from his body. Gradually, the aura around Yi Xian became stronger and stronger. Tao World. On this day, a total of 36 self-released tier elites of the Tao World left the Tao World. Their goal was precisely the fifth dimension. In truth, the Divine Palace and the Celestial Pavilion did not have that many self-released tier elites. The majority of self-released tier elites were lone cultivators and some other forces that had gathered. The reason why everyone had come was very simple. The fifth dimension had a Tao scripture. For the Tao scripture, all self-released tier elites would go crazy. And the Pope was also very smart, agreeing that once they obtained the Tao scripture, everyone would share it. It was precisely because of this reason that countless self-released tier elites of the Tao world had gathered around the Pope in Jiangyu. Demonic Path Clan. The Pope had brought 36 self-released tier elites to the fifth dimension, and Xiao Dao could be said to have received this news at the first instant. However, she was very helpless, because she could not help at all. The present Demonic Path Clan only had one self-released tier elite, and she really could not do anything. Very helpless. In front of the Demonic Path Palace, Xiao Dao looked at the horizon in the distance, her eyes filled with worry. She knew that the plain-dressed woman had already left, so how could Yi Xian resist these 36 self-released tier elites? Moreover, the ancient temple had joined hands with the Tao world. How could Yi Xian resist? Beside Xiao Dao, Mo Zhong said softly, if we had not provoked that plain-dressed woman back then, as he said this, he smiled bitterly. Why had the Demonic Path clan declined to such a state? It was because they had provoked that plain-dressed woman. It was fine if they had provoked her, but they had even invited her to the clan, nearly causing the clan to be wiped out. The current Demonic Path clan could not do anything when facing such matters. At the entrance of the palace, Xiao Dao was silent. In truth, the Demonic Path clan had already had a good ending. If not for Yi Xian, that plain-dressed woman would have killed everyone in the Demonic Path clan. When had that plain-dressed woman ever been soft-hearted? Only when facing Yi Xian would she show her benevolent side. At this moment, Xiao Dao suddenly said, I want to go down for a while. Hearing this, Mo Zhong's expression changed and he hurriedly said, Miss, you absolutely cannot do that. Right now. Xiao Dao said softly, if I go down I can more or less help. After he finished speaking, he had already disappeared. Seeing this, Mo Zhong was shocked and hurriedly chased after her. On the other side, in an abandoned ruin, a woman was slowly walking. This person was Chen Mo. There had once been a super large clan in these ruins. Chen clan. Mortal bloodline. The Chen family's ancestor had once been the first mortal bloodline in the Tao world. At that time, the Chen family had been the #1 clan in the Tao world. Unfortunately, with glory came decline. The descendants of the Chen family were not as good as the last and gradually declined. In the last period of time, as the youngest clan leader of the Chen family, in order to change the family situation, she used a secret technique to bring some clansmen to the fifth dimension, wanting to rebuild the family there. However, she did not expect that the fifth dimension Tendo would be so abnormal. At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared behind Chen Mo. The old man respectfully bowed to Chen Mo, clan leader. Chen Mo said softly, "How many people are left?" The old man said in a deep voice, "More than 100. However, most of them do not know that they are from the Chen family. Not only that, many of them have their bloodline completely diluted. It can be said that at least 90% of the clansmen can no longer activate the family's bloodline." Chen Mo was silent. The old man sighed softly, feeling sad and happy at the same time. He was sad that the Chen family had completely declined, but he was happy that his young miss had unexpectedly broken through the bloodline shackles. It could be said that his young miss was the first person in the Chen family after the ancestor. As if thinking of something, the old man hurriedly said, "Young miss, the Pope and the others have brought 36 self-release realm experts to the fifth dimension." Hearing this, Chen Mo frowned slightly. 36. The old man nodded. 36. Moreover, the Pope and Immortal Pavilion Master have personally gone. It seems that they want to kill the Yixian. Chen Mo was silent. The old man was about to speak when Chen Mo suddenly said, "I will make a trip to the fifth dimension. You stay here and slowly summon the clansmen." After saying this, she disappeared on the spot. In the sixth dimension. When Jarwa came to the pavilion where the sixth dimension Tendo lived. When Jarwa said in a deep voice, "The 36 self-release realm has reached the sixth dimension." The sixth dimension Tendo said softly, "Their target is Yixian?" When Jarwa nodded. "Yes." The sixth dimension Tendo was silent. When Jarwa said again, "The ancient temple has also moved." The sixth dimension Tendo looked at When Jarwa. "How many people?" When Jarwa said in a deep voice, 9 ascetic monks, all at the upper self-release realm. Moreover, the governor elder is personally leading them. Hearing this, the sixth dimension Tendo suddenly stood up. When Jarwa looked at the sixth dimension Tendo. "What is it?" The sixth dimension Tendo said in a deep voice, "Something big is going to happen." When Jarwa was a little puzzled. "What do you mean?" The sixth dimension Tendo said softly, "Have you ever thought about what will happen if that Yixian dies?" The plain-dressed woman. When Jarwa immediately thought of the plain-dressed woman. If Yixian dies, will the plain-dressed woman give up? Definitely not. When Jarwa said in a deep voice, "Something big is really going to happen." Somewhere in the starry sky, Moon Yin was slowly roasting the small fish in front of her. Roasting fish in the starry sky, one of a kind. At this moment, a voice sounded in her ear. "They are all going to fight him." The corners of Moon Yin's mouth raised slightly. Her smile was a little strange. "Isn't that good?" Chapter 1238. At the foot of the sacred mountain, the Pope and the others gathered. Looking at the ancient temple on the sacred mountain, the Pope chuckled, "This ancient temple is really mysterious." Jiang Yu nodded. Because their divine sense couldn't reach this ancient temple, before reaching halfway, it was blocked by a mysterious force. Jiang Yu was about to speak when an old monk suddenly appeared in front of him. It was the governor elder. The governor elder clasped his hands together, "Your Holiness." The Pope returned the greeting, "Governor elder, we should depart." The governor elder smiled, "All right." With that, 8 monks dressed in gray robes appeared behind him. Ascetics. All 8 were at the upper self-release realm. Although they couldn't compare to the Pope and the others in terms of quantity, their quality crushed them. Seeing these 8 ascetics, the Pope and Jiang Yu's hearts trembled. This ancient temple strength was stronger than they imagined. At this moment, the Pope and Jiang Yu were on guard. In fact, whether it was them or the ancient temple, they all had one question in mind. What would happen after killing Yixian? What would happen after killing Yixian? At that time, who would the study house belong to? This was a question they had no choice but to face. Of course, the prerequisite for this question was to obtain the study house first. The governor elder suddenly said, "Let's go." The Pope nodded, "To the fifth dimension." Soon, the group headed to the fifth dimension. Fifth dimension. On this day, the barrier of the fifth dimension suddenly split open, followed by dozens of powerful auras walking out from the crack. It was the Pope and the others. The Pope looked around and didn't find the aura of the fifth dimension Tendo. At this moment, the governor elder suddenly said, "This fifth dimension Tendo must be guarded against." The ancient temple was very afraid of the fifth dimension Tendo Munyenyen. The Pope smiled, "Believe me, she won't dare to come out today." His voice was full of confidence. The governor elder frowned slightly. He realized that the Tao world looked down on the fifth dimension Tendo. At this moment, the Pope suddenly looked down and smiled. "Isn't the Tao world lacking in spiritual energy? This world's spiritual energy is quite abundant." Jiang Yu said softly, "Indeed. But before that, let's get the study room first." The Pope nodded. "Of course." As he spoke, he looked down and slowly raised his right hand. In the next moment, a powerful aura swept down from the starry sky. Within that powerful aura, a giant hand that was thousands of feet long quietly condensed. The starry sky trembled. If that palm landed, the entire shaman city underneath would be reduced to nothingness. Right at this moment, a sword howl resounded abruptly from below. In the next moment, a strand of light slashed against the enormous palm. The sword light shattered, but the giant hand was still there. At this moment, several more sword lights slashed down. Boom. The giant hand shattered. Below him stood a woman wielding a sword. Was Agio. Agio gulped down a mouthful of wine and looked at the Pope and the others. When she saw so many people, she immediately turned and left. There were too many people. I can't beat him. Soon, Agio arrived at Yixin's room. She broke the door and entered. Yixin was still sitting cross-legged in the room. The aura on his body grew stronger and stronger and he was about to break through. Agio shook her head. "You chose a good time." After saying this, she turned and left. Agio had just walked out of the room when a powerful aura suddenly spread out from inside the room. Agio turned and saw Yixin walk out of the room. Agio raised her eyebrows slightly. "Returning element shattering realm?" Yixin nodded. Agio sized up Yixin then frowned. "His aura is unstable." Yixin nodded. "I know. He had just broken through to the shattering void tier not long ago, and now he broke through to returning element shattering realm. This was a little too fast. Thus there were some hidden dangers. However, at this moment he couldn't care so much." Yixin raised his head to look at the starry sky and asked softly, "Are they all here?" Agio nodded. "About 50 people and the lowest is self-release tier." Yixin blinked. "Shall we surrender?" Agio took a sip of wine then said, "I think it's fine." Yixin. In a short while Yixin, Agio and the others arrived in the starry sky. The Pope sized up Yixin, smiled and said, "Not bad indeed." Yixin looked at the Pope, smiled and said, "It seems that you are the Pope of the Tao realm." The Pope nodded. "Yes. Should I address you as Yi Qingji or Yixin?" Yixin glanced at the people behind the Pope, and finally looked at the Governor Elder. The Governor Elder put his palms together. "Young Master Yi, my ancient temple still feels that you are the greatest threat. You are an uncertain factor, and my ancient temple dares not take risks with uncertain factors." Sharing the Tao scripture. It had to be said that the ancient temple was a little tempted, but they were afraid. Afraid that Yixin would rise. Once this kind of genius freak rose, it was not something that the ancient temple could control. To put it simply, the ancient temple was confident in dealing with the Tao realm, but it did not have the information to deal with Yixin who would rise in the future. Yixin opened his palm, and the book appeared in his hand. As they looked at the book in Yixin's hand, the eyes of all the self-release realm experts instantly burned. They were all at the self-release realm, and it could be said that there were very few things that could move them. The Tao scripture. The Pope stared at Yixin and smiled. "What, you want to hand it over yourself?" Yixin fell silent. He had thought of handing over the book and letting them kill each other first. However, he did not do that. Because if he could think of it, they could think of it as well. In other words, even if he handed over the book, they would join forces to deal with him first. Yixin raised his head to look at the starry sky. This time they really did not give him a chance. 50 self-release realm experts. But the current fifth dimension did not have a single self-release realm expert. They really thought too highly of Yixin. At this time, the Pope suddenly said, "If you willingly hand it over, I can give you and the people by your side a quick death." Many times, a quick death is also a kind of fortune. Yixin looked at the Pope. "Before I die, I want to experience the strength of a self-release realm expert. I wonder if your holiness can give me this chance?" The Pope shook his head. "I will not give you any chance." As he spoke, he looked at the Governor Elder. "Attack together and kill this person first." The Governor Elder nodded. "Yes. One-on-one?" The Pope did not fear Yi Xian, but he did not look down on Yi Xian and did not want to fail miserably. In a one-on-one battle with Yi Xian, winning was normal and everyone would feel that it was a matter of course. But losing was extremely abnormal. Not only would his reputation be ruined, but he might even die. The predecessor of this person was the Yi Qingji of the past. After obtaining the governor elder's approval, the Pope looked down at Yi Xian. Attack. Leave no one alive. When they heard the cult master, the 30-plus self-release realm experts charged down towards the ground. Down below, Guanyin and the others were pale. This time, she had not calculated that the Tao world and the ancient temple would use all their forces to attack the fifth dimension. They were prepared to not give the fifth dimension any chance. How could they fight? The gap between them was just too big. Guanyin looked at the distant Yi Xian. Right now, all her hopes were on Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the dozens of people charging down from the horizon. He was very clear that with his current strength, he could not defeat them. Although Yi Xian could fight across realms, the other side had far too many people. But he had no choice but to fight. Yi Xian opened his palm and the world prison pagoda appeared in his hand. His expression gradually became fierce. Leave the formation. Bang. The starry sky beneath Yi Xian's feet violently trembled. Then, a massive starry sky array appeared all around him. Yi Xian opened his left hand and a sword appeared in it. The Tendo sword. This was the sword that Mu Nianyan had given him. He had never used it before, so he did not know the use of this sword. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. He suddenly pointed the sword upwards. In an instant, the entire world began to violently tremble. Soon, countless mysterious energies began to gather from the world like a tide. No, not from the world, but from the entire fifth dimension. This powerful energy was actually able to forcibly block the self-release realm experts that were charging down. Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. Even Yi Xian had not expected that his sword would be so formidable. From all around, endless energy gathered towards Yi Xian. Adding on the power of the array itself, at this moment, Yi Xian felt that he could destroy the universe. Yi Xian quietly put away the world prison pagoda. He suddenly realized that he could rely on this array and this sword to fight against his opponents. As for risking his life, he could wait a little longer. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the Pope and the others. The Pope softly said, "External strength is still an illusion in the end." After saying this, he suddenly punched out. With this punch, a black fist imprint swept out. Wherever the fist imprint passed, space became deathly still. This punch had already injured the source of the fifth dimension. Below, Yi Xian slashed out with his sword. A snow-white sword light tore through the air. Under the gazes of everyone, Yi Xian's sword directly slashed at the fist imprint. Bang! The sword light shattered. The fist imprint only became a little more illusory before continuing towards Yi Xian. At this time, Yi Xian slashed out with his sword again. A sword light soared into the sky and directly slashed at the fist imprint. Bang! This time, the fist imprint was unable to withstand Yi Xian's sword chi and exploded together with Yi Xian's sword chi. In the sky, the Pope looked at Yi Xian with an expressionless face. Attack together. Break the array and destroy the source of this world. After saying this, he seemed to have thought of something and looked at the governor elder of the ancient temple. "Sir, attack together." The governor elder hesitated for a moment and said, "There's someone behind Yi Xian. We have to be on guard." They had investigated Yi Xian. There were some mysterious people behind Yi Xian. Although they didn't know who they were or where they came from, they didn't dare to underestimate them. Someone. A wisp of disdain appeared on the corners of the Pope's mouth. "Today, whoever protects him will die." As he spoke, he directly charged down with all the experts. On the other side, Situ suddenly looked at Wine. "Don't you have a life-saving trump card?" Wine nodded. Situ frowned slightly. "Then why don't you use it?" Wine fell silent for a moment, and then she took out a wooden sword. This was left behind by the ancestor of the banished immortal island. Situ said, "Quickly use it. Otherwise that little fellow will die." Ajio didn't move. Situ looked at Wine and she said in a low voice, "I forgot how to use it." Situ was speechless. P.S. Don't tell me you forgot how to vote. Chapter 1239. He had forgotten how to use it. Situ looked at Ajio. "You're joking, right?" Ajio shook her head. "I'm serious." Situ. At this moment, in the distance, dozens of self-release realm experts had arrived above Yi Xian. Yi Xian had a savage look on his face as the prison pagoda appeared between his brows. In the next moment, a blood-red prisoner character appeared above the heads of the 4 self-release realm experts at the front. Boom 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 boom. 4 blood-red pillars of light enveloped the 4 of them, causing them to be unable to move. Seeing this scene, their expressions changed drastically. They tried to resist, but at this moment, the 4 of them exploded into nothingness. Instant kill. The other self-release realm experts were shocked when they witnessed this scene. What was that? In the sky, the Pope stared at Yi Xian. It wasn't just the Pope, everyone was staring at Yi Xian. Under everyone's gazes, Yi Xian's hair was turning white at a visible rate. In just a few breaths of time, his hair had turned completely white like snowflakes. Backlash. The Pope suddenly smiled. The price is lifespan. Clearly he could see that Yi Xian's lifespan was flowing away. However, the remaining self-release realm experts didn't dare to continue attacking. Just now, Yi Xian had instantly killed 4 self-release realm experts. Although they knew that Yi Xian was suffering from backlash, no one wanted to be the first to attack. The first to attack might be the first to die. At this moment, the Pope looked at Jiang Yu and Jiang Yu nodded. At this moment, the 2 of them had to attack. Otherwise no one would attack. The Pope and Jiang Yu suddenly vanished on the spot, and 2 powerful forces swept towards Yi Xian. In the distance, Situ suddenly looked at Audiobook. You still haven't finished your research? Audiobook shook her head. I have indeed forgotten. Situ shook her head. You are invincible. After saying this, she transformed into a blade light and slashed towards the sky. She knew that if she didn't act, Yi Xian would definitely die. Yi Xian no longer had the ability to activate the prison pagoda again. It wasn't just Situ who attacked with him but also Arrow and Lancio and the others. However, as soon as Situ and the others came into contact with the 2 Pope, they immediately dispersed. They were no match for the 2 Pope. The difference between their cultivation levels was too great. Very quickly, the Pope appeared directly above Yi Xian's head and looked down at Yi Xian, who was holding the World Prison Pagoda. The corners of the Pope's mouth curled into a sinister smile, and he fiercely slammed his palm down. With a wave of his palm, the space where Yi Xian stood directly turned illusory. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the sword sect. He did not use the World Prison Pagoda again because he could not endure a second backlash from the World Prison Pagoda. Moreover, even if he had the World Prison Pagoda, he was not confident that he could kill the Pope. The other party's strength was much stronger than he had expected. Yi Xian took a step forward, and his sword domain appeared all around him. This time he did not simply use his sword domain, but borrowed the power of his sword sense and the Tendo sword. With the support of his sword sense and the Tendo sword, his sword domain was powerful enough. Very quickly, the power of the Pope's punch entered Yi Xian's sword domain. In an instant, Yi Xian's face turned pale, and he hurriedly stabbed out with his sword. Sword is thought. Guardian thought. As his sword stabbed out, the Pope's power was forced to a stop, and gradually the power began to dissipate. As for Yi Xian, his expression became increasingly unsightly. In the air, the Pope looked at Yi Xian, the killing intent in his eyes thickening. Yi Xian's battle prowess was somewhat unexpected, and it made him feel somewhat apprehensive. He was a little fearful. At the very least, no one in the Dao world. On the other side, the Governor Elder was also staring at Yi Xian. At this moment, he felt that the ancient temple's choice was the correct one. At this moment, he felt that the ancient temple had made the right choice. If they chose Yi Xian, then once Yi Xian rose up in the future, the 2 ancient temples wouldn't be able to suppress him. Right now, Yi Xian was only in the returning essence-shattering realm, but he could already fight against the release realm. This was just too exaggerated. This kind of person should either not be enemies with him or be killed so that he would never rise again. The Governor Elder suddenly said, Pope, I will lend you a hand. The Pope smiled. Very good. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned to look at Yi Xian, and then he charged towards Yi Xian. The Governor Elder was even faster. He transformed into a golden ray of light that shot out explosively, and he instantly entered Yi Xian's sword domain. As soon as they entered Yi Xian's sword domain, a mouthful of blood essence instantly sprayed from Yi Xian's mouth, and he hurriedly withdrew his sword domain. Because his sword domain couldn't endure the strength of the Pope and the Governor Elder any longer. Meanwhile, the Pope and the Governor Elder were only over 30 m away from Yi Xian, and their powerful forces were like a storm that enveloped Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly raised his hands. I surrender. He surrendered. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone here was stunned. The Pope and the Governor Elder were slightly stunned as well. He's going to surrender? What the hell? Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly withdrew the book. Yi Xian gazed at the Pope and the Governor Elder in the sky, wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth and then said, "I surrender. Take this." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly made a tossing motion with his right hand, and the book flew into the air. At this moment, the gazes of everyone here shot towards the book. The Pope instinctively wanted to take it, but a powerful strand of divine sense had locked onto him. It was the Governor Elder. Besides that, the self-release realm experts who'd come with him from the Tao world were looking at him as well, and their gazes were slightly off. The Tao scripture. The Pope didn't dare to move. If he tried to take it by force now, then he would definitely be attacked by everyone. The Pope seemed to have thought of something, and he gazed at Yi Xian while his eyes narrowed slightly. "You're trying to divert our attention." All of them gazed at Yi Xian when they heard this. Obviously, Yi Xian wanted to divert their attention. Yi Xian wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth again, and then he said, "Everyone, don't all of you want this book? Come, I'll give it to all of you right now." The Pope gazed at Yi Xian and laughed coldly. "Everyone, I think that it's better for us to join forces and kill him first. Otherwise, with his natural talent, he'll definitely give all of you a huge headache once he attains the self-release realm in the future." As he spoke, he gazed at the Governor Elder. "What do you think?" The Governor Elder looked at Yi Xian and nodded. "All right. However, who will take care of the book for now?" That was a problem. The Pope fell silent. Give it to the ancient temple for safekeeping? He naturally wouldn't do that. At the same time, the ancient temple wouldn't agree to give it to him as well. This was where Yi Xian was smart, open schemes. Of course, there was another reason, and it was that the attraction of the book was sufficiently great. Both the Pope and the ancient temple were unable to refuse it. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Everyone, I have an idea." All of them gazed at Yi Xian, and then the Pope suddenly said, "Don't even think about it." As he spoke, he was about to make a move. At this time, Yi Xian's palm suddenly opened. The World Prison Pagoda appeared in his hand. He looked at the Pope and the others, smiling. "Everyone, I, Yi Xian, am invincible under self-release realm. Above self-release realm, I will trade 1 for 1. Whoever doesn't agree, come." 1 for 1. The Pope stared at Yi Xian. When the book was handed over, he didn't dare to risk his life anymore. At least, he didn't dare to risk his life alone. If Yi Xian really risked his life against him, if he was injured, then he would have no fate with the Tao scripture. The Governor Elder didn't dare to make the first move because he had the same thought as the Pope. Right now, both sides were afraid that Yi Xian would risk his life against them. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Everyone, you want to kill me because you're afraid that I will rise in the future and become a threat to you. But that is under the premise that I have the Tao scripture. But now, I have already handed over the Tao scripture. Everyone, once you obtain the Tao scripture and comprehend its mysteries, you will be above self-release realm. Let me ask you, at that time, will you still be afraid of me?" Hearing this, everyone pondered. That's right. If they were above self-release realm, would they still be afraid of Yi Xian? In the square, everyone looked at the book not far away. The Pope stared at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, you want us to fight amongst ourselves?" Yi Xian smiled. "Your Holiness, let me ask you, if I didn't have me Yi Xian, would you hand over this item to the ancient temple?" The Pope looked at Yi Xian, not saying anything, but his eyes were filled with killing intent. Yi Xian looked at the Governor Elder and smiled. "Governor Elder, you said that I am a greater threat, but that is only if I have the Tao scripture. Without it, I won't be able to pose any threat to the ancient temple for at least 10 years, right?" The Governor Elder was silent. Indeed, without the Tao scripture, no matter how monstrous Yi Xian was, he wouldn't be able to reach the peak of the ancient temple in a short period of time. Yi Xian continued, "The 5th dimension will soon have a 5th dimension tribulation and I still have to face it. What do you think?" The Governor Elder looked at Yi Xian. "But if you die, we will be more at ease." Yi Xian smiled. "Of course. But Governor Elder, don't forget, once the Tao realm Pope obtains the Tao scripture, the situation will be different. Do you know about the plain-dressed woman? Do you know why she is so strong? Because she obtained a few lines of the Tao scripture from Yi Qingji, so she became so strong. She killed a 6th-dimensional self-release realm expert by herself." Saying this, he looked at the people in the sky. "To be able to reach self-release, you are certainly monstrous among monstrous geniuses, geniuses among geniuses. I believe that if you can obtain the Tao scripture, even if it is just 1 page with your talent and knowledge, you will definitely be able to surpass self-release and reach above it." Everyone was silent. At this moment, they finally knew why the plain-dressed woman was so strong. So she had seen the Tao scripture before. Everyone looked at the Tao scripture again, some people's eyes burning with undisguised passion. At this moment the Pope suddenly said angrily, "Yi Xian, you are misleading us with your lies. You want us to kill each other so you can reap the benefits." Yi Xian shook his head. "Your Excellency Pope, I only want to live, so I will hand over the Tao scripture." Saying this, he looked at the people in the sky. "Even if you can't beat them, you can't surrender?" The Pope said in a low voice, "Everyone, you must not believe Yi Xian, this person." At this moment, the book in the sky suddenly turned into a ray of white light and flew towards the Pope. Seeing this, Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Wow, Pope, you actually attacked." At this moment, the surrounding self-release realm experts directly charged towards the Pope. Even Jiang Yu was no exception. Chapter 1240. The study was naturally Yi Xian's idea. He knew very well that if he didn't hand over the study, then not only would he die, everyone around him would die as well. He couldn't rely on others to save him every single time. He could only rely on himself. And he could only rely on himself. If he couldn't win, then he would play dirty. When the study flew towards the Pope, the experts present couldn't maintain their composure, and they practically didn't hesitate to charge towards the Pope. At this moment, Yi Xian wasn't in their minds. There was only a single thought in their minds, and that was to prevent the Pope from obtaining the study. The experts from the ancient temple and the others charged over as well. The study absolutely couldn't fall into the Pope's hands. Otherwise, it would be extraordinarily difficult to seize the ancient temple back. At the center of the crowd, the Pope was greatly alarmed when he saw the study charge towards him, and his first thought was that something bad was about to happen. When he saw everyone charging towards him, he practically didn't hesitate to grab the study, turn around and flee. Flee back to the Bloodshed God Palace. This was what he was thinking right now. Because the Bloodshed God Palace was his territory and he would be safe there. The Pope's movements were very swift. After seizing the study, he turned around and fled very quickly. In the blink of an eye, he'd left the fifth dimension. When they saw this, the experts from the ancient temple and the others couldn't be bothered about anything else and chased after him. As for Jiang Yu and the others, they chased after him as well. In next to no time, all the self-release realm experts in the sky above the fifth dimension had vanished. Everyone instantly heaved sighs of relief when they saw this scene. Meanwhile, Guanyin walked over to Yi Xian's side and asked softly, "Are you really going to hand it over?" Yi Xian smiled, "Of course." Guanyin wanted to say something but hesitated, but she didn't say anything in the end. The study was very important, but everyone's lives were even more important. Yi Xian suddenly said, "I'm going to heal my injuries." With that, he turned around and left. Guanyin glanced at Yi Xian's departing figure and didn't say anything. It didn't take long for the crowd to disperse. When Yi Xian returned to his room, a woman suddenly appeared before him. It was Chen Imo. Chen Imo looked at Yi Xian. "Did you really hand it over?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Could it be fake?" Chen Imo spoke in a low voice, "Do you know what that scripture means?" Yi Xian asked, "Is it more important than your life?" Chen Imo fell silent. The Tao scriptures were indeed important, but were they more important than one's life? Chen Imo looked at Yi Xian. "Are you really willing?" Yi Xian shook his head. "So what if I'm unwilling?" Chen Imo said solemnly, "Why didn't you ask the fifth dimension Tendo to help?" Yi Xian whispered, "Does she owe me?" "No, she doesn't owe me, Yi Xian." This time, after he handed over the bookstore, he suddenly felt his entire body relax. It was not because he was temporarily safe. It was the heart. His heart relaxed. Persistence. Previously he had the bookstore and felt that it was his. Therefore he, Yi Xian, would rather die in battle than hand it over. However, he suddenly realized, why didn't he hand it over? Could it be that he really had to rely on this bookstore to reach above self-release? Moon Yinyin had once said that the Tao scripture in the bookstore was a path given by others. She disdained walking the path given by others. She wanted to carve out her own path. As for him, Yi Xian looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand. He had to carve out a path that belonged to him. There was no plain-dressed woman. There was no azure-robed man. There was no prophet. He was who he was. When he no longer relied on anyone, that was the time to recognize himself. Free heart. Moon Yinyin had once said that above sword sense was the free heart. What was free heart? It meant that there were no restrictions. People lived in one's life. Many times they were imprisoned by others, but even more often they were imprisoned by themselves. They bound their own hearts. As for him, he was bound by others and also by himself. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Soon he was like an old monk in meditation. Seeing this scene, Qian Mo gave him a deep look. This guy was about to break through. And it was a breakthrough in the sword Dao. Was he so abnormal? He wanted to break through just by handing over something? Qian Mo shook her head. A swordsman was the most unpredictable person. Qian Mo quietly retreated. Outside the door was Guanyin. Qian Mo looked at Guanyin. You followed him for that Dao scripture. Guanyin looked at Qian Mo. For survival. Qian Mo said plainly, without him, the fifth dimension is safer. Guanyin shook his head. Fifth dimension tribulation. Qian Mo was silent. Guanyin said again, Miss Qian Mo followed him because of that Dao scripture? Qian Mo said, yes. But he is gone now. After saying that, she turned and left. At this time, Guanyin suddenly said, Miss Qian Mo, do you really think that the bookstore is in the hands of the Pope? Qian Mo turned and looked at Guanyin. After a while, she seemed to have thought of something and shook her head with a smile. Guanyin looked at Yi Xian's room in silence. When she saw the bookstore fly towards the Pope, she knew that things were not so simple. In fact, everyone had overlooked one point. The bookstore had already recognized Yi Xian as its master. Sixth dimension. When Zhaohua rushed to the sixth dimension Tendo's pavilion, she looked at the sixth dimension Tendo. He handed over the bookstore. The sixth dimension Tendo was silent. When Zhaohua said in a deep voice, the plain-dressed woman did not appear. The fifth dimension Tendo also did not make a move. The sixth dimension Tendo looked at Wen Zhaohua. What do you want to say? Wen Zhaohua said softly, I think that plain-dressed woman will not appear. The sixth dimension Tendo frowned. You have thoughts about that Dao scripture? Wen Zhaohua nodded, yes. The sixth dimension Tendo sighed, greed often kills people. Zhaohua, believe me, that Dao scripture is a hot potato. Whoever takes it will die. When Zhaohua was silent, the sixth dimension Tendo said again, the Pope has obtained the Dao scripture. You will not have a good ending. Let's not talk about the plain-dressed woman and the others. That prophet is not a good person. He must have thought of any possibility for the things he left behind. You watch carefully. According to my guess, the bookstore will eventually return to Yi Xian's hands. When Zhaohua frowned, how is it possible? The sixth dimension Tendo said softly, why is it not possible? When Zhaohua was silent, the sixth dimension Tendo looked at Wen Zhaohua. This matter is very complicated. Sixth dimension should maintain the status quo. As long as we have no other thoughts about the bookstore, the Dao world will not provoke us. The ancient temple will not. Similarly, Yi Xian will not either. If we give up a bookstore, we will get more. When Zhaohua nodded slightly, understood. The sixth dimension Tendo said again, the Dao world will be chaotic. As she said this, she looked up with a trace of worry in her eyes. The Dao scripture reappeared in the world. It was not a good thing. The Dao world. The Pope brought the bookstore with him and sprinted straight for the God Palace. In fact, his mind was very clear at this moment. He knew that the bookstore flying towards him was definitely Yi Xian's doing. Yi Xian wanted him to become the target of everyone. However, he had no way to refuse. It should be said that his heart wanted to refuse, but his body couldn't. Only heaven knew how many years he had been in self-release extreme realm. This Dao scripture was his hope to break through, and he really didn't want to give it up. Therefore, even though he knew that this was Yi Xian's scheme, he had no choice but to fall for it. Because of Yi Xian's conspiracy, he had no idea. There was no way to refuse. Right now, he needed to return to the Bloodshed God Palace. Behind him were dozens of self-release realm experts. Somewhere in the starry sky, Moon Yin watched the madly fleeing Pope. There was still a roasted fish in her hand, but half of it had already been eaten. At this moment, a voice rang in Moon Yin's ears. He handed over the study room. Moon Yin smiled and said, it's a good thing. The voice was somewhat puzzled. What do you mean? Moon Yin indifferently said, he previously wanted to use the study room to resist the fifth dimension tribulation. This in itself was a foolish idea. The voice asked, is the fifth dimension tribulation very frightening? Moon Yin rolled her eyes. What do you think? The voice said, but the fifth dimension has experienced so many fifth dimension tribulations, yet there are still so many living beings in the fifth dimension. Moon Yin pointed at herself. Please, that's because of me. The voice, Moon Yin softly sighed. You see, I'm so powerful, but I still fell ill from blocking the fifth dimension tribulation. What about him? If he wants to use the study room to resist the fifth dimension tribulation, that idea will kill him. There are 4 kinds of tribulations in this world. The first is the heavenly tribulation, the second is the heart tribulation, and the third is the human tribulation. This fifth dimension tribulation is both the heavenly tribulation and the heart tribulation. After the heart tribulation, there is still the human tribulation. If he wants to use the study room to resist it, it is unrealistic. The voice asked, if there isn't, then what about the study room? Moon Yin smiled. Actually, a person's own body is the greatest wealth. Unfortunately, many people don't dig out their own potential. They all want to rely on external objects. This is a bit like putting the cart before the horse. As she spoke, she looked at the distant horizon and softly said, humans are blessed by the heavens, especially when it comes to cultivation. They have an advantage over many other living beings. Of course, humans are also especially greedy, just like this Pope. The voice asked, what do you mean? Moon Yin smiled. The people of the Tao world are very stupid. They think that after reaching the self-release realm, there is no path. They need Tao scriptures to continue advancing. Little do they know that this kind of thinking is very stupid. It is like a person walking in front of a huge mountain and finding that there is no path. Then they will stop walking and feel that there must be a path for them to walk. This kind of thinking is very stupid because it is the same as trapping themselves. Since there is no path in front of them, why not create a path for themselves? Their thoughts are all trapped by themselves. As she spoke, she shook her head. Since Yi Xian can hand over the study room, it proves that he has already walked out of this predicament. The voice asked again, what do you plan to do next? Moon Yin shook her head. He will walk the next path by himself. With that, she turned and left. The voice asked, you were prepared to make a move before, right? Moon Yin smiled. The current him doesn't need my help. That's not right, there is still a problem that needs to be solved for him. With that, she turned and arrived in front of the Tao world's cosmic barrier. What was the world above the Tao world? No one knew. Currently, only the plain-dressed woman had broken this cosmic barrier. Moon Yin looked at the cosmic barrier in front of her and smiled. My name is Moon Yin. Before I die, you are not allowed to come over, okay? After a moment of silence, a voice sounded from the depths of the cosmic barrier. You think too highly of yourself. Moon Yin shook her head and smiled. Suddenly, she opened her palm and a sword appeared in it. She wanted to draw her sword but soon shook her head. You are not worthy of my sword. With that, she gently drew a line with her fingers and the cosmic barrier in front of her split open. A moment later she rushed in. A quarter of an hour later Moon Yin walked out and in her hands there were 2 bloody heads. However, her face had turned a little pale. Moon Yin threw the 2 bloody heads aside and shook her head. Really, you look down on me so much? Besides that plain-dressed woman, who do you think I am afraid of? Oh. P.S. If everyone still has a ticket, you know what I mean. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.